Gather around, freaks. We're back. We took a week off, but we're here again, and it's a new month. And it's season 3. It's the season premiere of Hey, Did You See This One? So gather around your internet fire. Gather around the internet radio and smoke a big old spliff and drop your acid and drop your LSD and take your mushrooms because we're getting so sci-high, you're not even going to know what's going on. It's Hey, Did You See This One?
The time has come for you and any other brave enough to venture into the black void of the unknown, to take a closer look at some of those strange films from an era long past. The ones that look like they were made by folks on a serious space trip. Join us as we unearth head-scratching plots, cringe-worthy effects, and ideas so bizarre you'll be wondering what the f*** they were smoking in the writer's room. This month, Hey, Did You See This One? Invites you to grab your tinfoil hats and buckle up for a wild ride through the wonderfully weird worlds of retro sci-fi in Sci-HIGH-ence Fiction.
Hey, what's up, man? You guys high or what? You guys high on?
I could have got high. I didn't know that was the theme.
You take mushrooms and LSD and acid and
My beer can looks like it's high. Look at all that.
and cocaine all at the same time. It's Hey, Did You See This One? Welcome, everybody. It's season 3, which means nothing. It's just a way that I like to sort of split things up. This is our this is sort of the point of the show now where we have gotten to our pinnacle. Everything is fallen into place. I wanted to delineate that by starting a new season, and to start the new season off, we're going to start it off right with Sci-HIGH-ence Theater, where we have to ask each other and ourselves, what were they on and what were they smoking? This is episode 150 also, I believe, which is also a pretty big.
Should have made a sting for that.
Got me. You don't
Yeah.
Oh wait, we do have a sting for it. I forgot. It's this.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that, Steve.
Oh, it was too quiet. Hold on, here we go.
And Tim's thanking us. Tim's wishing us a happy 150 as well. Craig has a unique ability to come on these big episodes. I think he was here. I think he was like the first guest after our third co-host left. I think that was something. I think he was also on a season finale last year or something. I don't know.
That's the first episode with the third co-host.
Yeah, no, yeah. Your other thing is you were the first.
I bookended that, and I wish I could remember his name. I feel bad, but not that bad. Someone's not going to remember my name when I was scheduled to be on the podcast. or
Right.
even that guy, whatever your name is.
Yeah. You can check him out on Wanna Watch a Movie on TikTok. We'll leave it at that. That said, I think that's all that I guess this is season 3, episode 1 on top of all of that. And this week, we're talking about the 1980 cult classic, Flash Gordon. And like we were just saying, I'd like to welcome back to the show, friend of the show, former guest of the show, star of improv, star of the Vinyl Countdown podcast, which
we don't talk about Vinyl Countdown.
We don't talk about Bruno, no. We don't talk about that. Another podcast we don't talk about. He was my former co-host on Blossom Buddies, the wildly popular. It was so popular that when
getting downloads.
Yeah, when Blossom Buddies ended, Mayim Bialik stopped being a good person and became a Zionist. Mm-hmm. So one thing goes one hand in the, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yep. Two in the bush and one in the hand.
2 in the bush is worth 2 in the pink and 2 in the sting. Welcome back to the show, Craig Webster.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about this movie. I had never seen it before 2 days ago. I get a lot of opinions about it.
I need Steve to be back. So
yeah, where'd that guy go?
I need him to hear the new Sting.
I'm gonna stop remembering his name if he keeps doing this.
Yeah, not the
pure. Revenge on people. I just stop remembering your name.
I'll play this. This will kill a couple seconds.
No.
You must watch that.
Okay, I'm gonna watch it tonight.
Not the boar worms. Not the boar worms. Girl,
What are the boar worms?
The boar worms are the worms and stuff. You're not the boar worms. It's just everything is so sexual and so flash.
I gotta watch it.
Not the boar worms. Not the boar worms.
Did they say it all sensual like that?
Look at it. It's not the boar worms. Not the boar worms. I really want to seduce a man like that. Not the boar worms. No, not the boar worms.
It's such fortuitous luck that became viral like a week before we were doing this podcast. It's very funny.
I have to tell you a truth. You liked that meme. I didn't understand it. I thought they were just saying it funny. And then today, while I'm watching the movie, she goes, "Not the boar worms." And I was like, "Oh, I might had one of those like everything came into focus moments."
Mm-hmm. Well, if you watch the actual podcast, they show the clip from the movie, like they watch it together, and
okay.
And Katya is like, "You do it a little bit more sensually. You do it a little
goes,
bit
not
more
the boar worms."
Yeah. Sorry, the police were just at my door. That was weird.
Oh,
did you tell them you were doing a podcast?
I said, "I gotta go. I'm doing a podcast, officer." No, they were looking for someone down the hall who I don't know. They're just asking me if I knew who it was, and I'm like, I don't know anybody. Sorry.
Yeah,
I know 5 people outside of this building. No one in the building, though.
Well, that's great. So we've been joking around about. I want to have the guests do a brief synopsis of the movie, just real quick, just in a paragraph. What's the movie about? For many weeks there was no Sting for it, and then Steve cobbled something together last week, and didn't have time to I like it. I went back and listened to it actually before this, and I was like, that's pretty good. But I'd already created this new one. So for the first time ever on this show, I've created a Sting, and this is, "Hey guest, can you give us a brief synopsis?" Hey guest, why don't you give us a brief synopsis?
Oh my god.
I'm almost there.
It's so long.
No, stop.
All right. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Too long, but I like it.
No,
it's
Steve. Come
too long
on.
enough.
I wanted it to be nonsensical and funny, and I clicked
was
on like
trying to-
three
I was-
songs.
I was working on one today, and I mean, it's not unsimilar to yours.
Really? Like, I don't why a weird like Egyptian.
Because I was also trying to go for something completely different from all of our other stings, right? That's
Yeah,
the funny
that's
thing
what I
about the
was thinking.
stings is they have no connective tissue whatsoever. They're all completely different. Anyway,
Anyway, Craig, the floor is
So-
yours. Give us a brief synopsis of the film Flash Gordon, please.
Flash Gordon. So my TLDR is that this was a shitty movie with a big budget, which made some of the parts really fucking awesome. As far as the synopsis go, I mean, Flash Gordon is a football player. He's not even a superhero. I was coming into this movie thinking he was a superhero. He's a football player who gets on a plane as a horn dog because he's eyeing that real estate agent who's also getting on like a 2-person passenger plane to New York. And then Ming the Merciless attacks from planet Mongo, and some scientist, he was like, I was right. Everyone, nobody believed me, but I was right. They're attacking and we have to go to planet Mongo. So some shit happens that I don't really understand. And then everyone ends up in space fighting all these space aliens. Now, Ming the Merciless, he's like an emperor of planet Mongo and all the moons of Mongo. And he is constantly trying to make sure that everyone else, all the other kings or emperors or queens, whatever, all the other royalty are fighting so that he can, maintain power because they never team up against him. But spoiler alert, because Flash Gordon's a football player, he knows all about teamwork. So he puts all those other factions together into a team so that they can fight back against Ming the Merciless, and many space battles and sexual comments entail. There's a lot of
it's pretty
implied
horny. Yeah.
sexuality. It's a very horny movie.
That's pretty good. And there is, like I was saying in the pre-show, there's a porno that came out 6 years before this, which I guess is a remake of the like a porno parody of the 1930s version, which this is a remake of that. I always thought for some reason that the porn version was a porn version of this from after it.
Well, that would make sense. Who
Because
makes a
they're very similar
porn parody
movie.
of a 1930s serial?
Yeah,
Right?
it's in the comic book. Yeah, they're making a porn parody of a comic book.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot of weird history with Flash Gordon.
I will be looking up that porn though.
I
Not
remember
right
it was
now.
on. It was on TV, like cable, like all the time when I was a kid. I remember being like, "What is it?" And
Or just like CBC.
for a very long time, I thought that this movie was that movie. I didn't know there was a differentiating factor between the two, so I just assumed that Flash Gordon was a naughty porno movie. Turns
Well,
out,
with that said, that's kind of going to tie into my brief history. So this is a brief history.
a brief history.
And once again, it is the duty of the guest to go first. So, Craig, why don't you tell us your brief history with Flash Gordon?
Oh, I just want to point out World Mind on YouTube is mentioning that he prefers Captain Proton, the Star Trek Voyager kind of iteration of this, which I fucking love as well. Good on you. Sorry, what was the question?
Just your brief history.
My history with this, my personal history with this movie, not the making of the film. I remember when I was probably like 6 or 7, I was at a flea market or something with my parents. It was a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly. But I found this like book about like sci-fi movies, and I was just flipping through it while my parents were off doing whatever, looking at things that were uninteresting to a 7-year-old boy. And I wanted the book, and this old couple running the table, they just let me have the book for free. I had a whole bunch of shit about Flash Gordon. So I saw pictures. There were some words to read, but I mean, I didn't really care for the words. I was just looking at the cool pictures. But it also had like some Star Wars stuff and Superman and all that stuff. But I really remember Flash Gordon. I mean, 37, 38 years later, I'd still never seen it. It was always one of those movies that was like, I should see that sometime, but never really... It didn't motivate me enough to actually go find it and watch it until you guys gave me the perfect excuse to do so. And I expected Cuckoo Bananas, and I got Cuckoo Bananas.
You're absolutely right.
I did.
Steve.
So this is one of those movies where I know I've seen it, but I don't really think I ever watched it fully through. It was on TV a lot. I thought it was a porno at first. I could have been meshing the two together, but I don't really have like a an actual
Like in the
brief
porno.
history of this. Yeah. Watching it through again now, I was certain segments of the movie were completely deleted from my memory because they were from the other movie that I'd seen many times on Showcase.
At around midnight.
Around midnight on Friday. Yeah. But yeah, I have more of a history with like the cartoon show that came out in the early 2000s. I think there was a TV show, like a live action TV show that came out in the late 2000s as well, like 2007 or so. I watched those specifically because they were fun science fiction akin to like Farscape or Star Wars or whatever you want to call it. But it never really kind of pulled me into the universe. But I have to say, watching it again today, I'm a little bit more into the universe. I think it's very fun in its simplicity and just, princes and barons run the galaxy, but they're all like ruled over by an evil emperor, and they are having infighting because the emperor is pinning them against each other. It's just kind of like a stupid fun. And I love that he has like a disaster blaster or whatever. Like he can just cause natural disasters on your planet.
Yeah, but he's got hot hail. Tornado. Hot hail is my favorite because that was what was then flashing. Like that's the one they drilled into your brain during the intro. Was hot hail, just like stuck on the screen for half the intro. Hot hail. What the?
It's basically just meteorites.
Like, it's little meteors, and it also regular hails at one point too. Which I was like, the hot hail is just hail.
Well, also like one of the pieces of hot hail goes into the science lab or whatever, and the scientist pokes it with his pen, and his pen, for like a split second, catches on fire. And I'm like, that's actually a burning hot rock that they threw on set. Yeah, like that's so dangerous.
He called it a moon rock. So is hot hail like pieces of the moon, or did he just assume it was moon rock because he's a bad scientist? Well, he did no investigation. He touched it with a pen.
The volcano also erupts during that time too. So is hot hail just the volcano debris? Anyway, we're going to talk about all that and more. Steve, do you have anything else that you want to say about your brief history?
Not particularly, no.
Okay. Mine's pretty much the same as yours, Steve, where as I said, I thought that the adult film version of this came after because it was on Showcase all the time. But I think through that, me and my friends in like early high school were like, we were experimenting with marijuana, trying that out for the first and last time. And I remember somebody had it on VHS or we rented it and watched it, and it like freaked our beans. It blew our minds because of how absurd it was. We hadn't really been exposed to anything like this in the early 2000s. And what I also remembered today is I'm pretty sure this is one of those movies like there's a few movies my dad showed me as a kid. Obviously Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters, obviously Flesh Gordon, yeah. No, obviously like Star Wars, but he also showed me some weird ones like Tron's Deadly Discs, or just Tron, whatever the movie's called.
Or the adult version, Tron's Deadly Dick.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure this was one of the weird movies I was shown as a kid that like I didn't retain it at all. But when I see moments in this movie, I'm like, this looks like my memories, But
I think that the sound design really sticks with me a lot because I listen to the soundtrack quite a bit, the Queen soundtrack, and not so much anymore, but I listened to it a lot in high school in my early 20s and stuff. So like the sound effect of his ring and things like all those are integrated, and certain line readings in the movie are played throughout the album as well. So like there's just little moments that made me happy because I associate them with being happy driving as a teenager. Like, Clytus, I'm bored. Yes.
Isn't the Flash Gordon soundtrack considered also just a Queen album? Isn't it just
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
They were,
and it's fucking awesome. It is the best part about this movie, in my opinion. Like in terms of like camp aside, like camp value aside, Queen is the best part about this movie. The music is so fucking good. Actually, a little bit more personal history. I used to DJ, and Flash by Queen I would play a lot because it would just hype me up. I don't know if anyone else gave a shit, but man,
it
the way
it's very
the whole time.
Yeah. And I loved how like the the score also integrated that sort of like that build up, sort of like that marching build up at the beginning. They play it at the end as well, but they also play it throughout the movie. Anytime there's any kind of action going on, you've got that sort of consistent like dun, 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 dun. Even with like the orchestral music and the synthesizer music mixed with the guitars and the sort of classic rock stuff. It's so good. It's so good.
It's so good. I'm gonna favorite the soundtrack on Spotify or whatever, and give it a few good listens.
And it's such a good way to open up a movie like this, because I don't want to call this movie dull, because it's not dull, but it borders on dull at times.
The story is a little thin, and the dialogue was horrendous.
It's a little He-Man adjacent. He-Man clearly took some inspiration from this with the way that.
For sure. Yeah, He-Man is kind of Flash Gordon.
I think that this sci-fi sort of bleeds through a lot of modern popular sci-fi. Like I think that I'm sure that when Ant-Man goes small, they took some inspiration from the way the sky looks in this when they're in like deep space and it's all trippy. I've seen that, and
I had
also
to look up how they do that, because I was like, this is a really interesting effect, and it's clearly not computer generated, so I'm wondering how they did it.
No, I've seen it in a few places, but
the way they do it is they would take colored dye and they would inject it into water on different levels, and then they would film it in high speed so that they could play it back at sort of a desired pace depending on what was happening in the sequence, to sort of have this sort of weird trippy liquidy clouds. So the clouds don't really act like clouds you'd see in the sky. It's just cloudy water, which is pretty cool.
And something that I never put together was that Dayman from It's Always Sunny is clearly just like a parody of this, of the Flash song. It was glaringly obvious when I was watching the movie today and listening to that song, but I had never really put that together before.
They actually mentioned that on the Always Sunny podcast before they gave up on it, because they did that episode before they gave up on it, and they mentioned that that's the Queen song that was the direct inspiration for that.
That's awesome. I listened to every episode of that too. It's in here. It's all up here.
It's in here, but
I like this. Welcome, Michael Cooley. You're absolutely correct. RFK Jr. did survive a boar worm and it laid eggs, and he got no part of his brain taken out. So
I mean, just another interesting fact about the soundtrack is that I believe it's the first movie that integrated a rock band with the composer working together to make a full soundtrack for a film. It's been done since, obviously, many times, but and not made by like a rock band where the rock band was also heavily involved in the filmmaking, so like The Wall and stuff like that, which is also just kind of like an interesting, cool thing, because when you think of Queen, I don't know, you don't immediately think like, oh, they would definitely be into doing Flash Gordon.
Yeah, it's a bizarre choice, but like, I mean, Freddie Mercury was a bit of an out there guy, and I mean, I don't even know anything about Brian May and the rest of Queen. Really.
Well, Freddie Mercury says in one of his songs that he doesn't like, and I don't like Star Wars, in that he doesn't like popular culture stuff. So it is interesting that they did this whole thing. Oh, that's a good point.
They mentioned Star Wars because Star Wars, George Lucas originally wanted to make Flash Gordon, and he didn't get the rights or something. So he's like, "Well, I'll just change Ming the Merciless to Darth Vader and flip some characters around." Like Star
Wars was whole face dude to
he approached the studio to adapt Flash Gordon, and then he didn't really like. It's not like he carbon copied. He more so carbon copied Dune, but he basically just kind of rewrote or reworked his Flash Gordon ideas into Star Wars. But it was because a specific director, I know Dino De Laurentiis, I think, was the one who was like holding on to the rights for everything for Flash Gordon, because he had all these big grand ideas for it, but he waited too long because Star Wars came out, ruled, and then they're like, we got to do Flash Gordon now.
Put it out now. Get Queen on the phone.
Do you want to push us into director talk? Because I think
all right. Quiet on set. Are we rolling? Okay, let's shoot this piece of shit. Sound, speed, action.
So Dino De Laurentiis didn't direct this movie, but he was a producer, and he's pretty like a fairly well-known and renowned film producer of the era, and it seemed like he had sort of a weird power over the influence of the filmmaking of this. Like he was basically directing it from afar a lot of the time. Like I was reading a little bit about it, and the costume and set designer were one and the same. And this guy would just refuse to read the script, and he would refuse to look at any of the comic book stuff. He would maybe look at a little bit of the comic book stuff, but he would just like meld some things together from the comic in his imagination. And same with the sets. And he was going crazy with the sets. And the director of photography is like, we can't shoot this. There's nowhere to put the camera. You're basically creating a real forest.
Well, what's interesting is they do scenes like that are very similar to the Star Destroyer flying over the screen, but it looks like so bad and hokey, and like you're looking at a toy. And if you watch Star Wars looks so good especially by comparison to this.
Yeah. So my thoughts on that is that because most sci-fi movies, I mean, you guys are going to go through the rest of this month and see the exact same thing. Like Star Wars was an exception. It looked awesome. Nothing else looked awesome. Right. Any other sci-fi movie you saw at the time, Star Trek also like looked pretty good. But even then, like Star Wars looked better than Star Trek, at least the first Star Trek movie. You're gonna find that with all of them. I think it looks awesome. It's just that George Lucas tapped into.
Well, the crazy thing is that the director of photography for Star Wars was the same director of photography for this movie. So it's
oh my god,
it's crazy to think. I mean, there's also the fact that Star Wars has been tweaked and remastered 1 billion times to the point that all of our sort of modern sensibilities are reflective of those versions of the movie. That's not to say that the original version of Star Wars didn't also look amazing, but you know, I have the original VHSs, not the ones that were re-released in the 90s. I have the original ones. And
yeah, me too. I got them.
Yeah, and you put those on and you can see some cracks. You know, you can see through the veneer a little bit.
Not green screen necessarily, but yeah, you can see the layering.
Yeah. And I mean, it still looked amazing for the time, but everybody was trying to emulate it. And it is that outlier, right? Because there isn't a huge difference in terms of the themes and sort of the motifs of everything within something like Flash Gordon and Star Wars. It's just Star Wars kind of hit differently and had that staying power. And this movie came out the same year as Empire Strikes Back. So it was also sort of like doubling down, and people were like, no, this is trying to be Star Wars. Like Star Wars has already kind of like cornered off its section of the science fantasy realm. And I mean, it's still kind of untouchable, right? People are still trying to do it. Zack Snyder tried to do it last year or whatever with those fucking Rebel Moon movies. Nobody can do it.
The sexy Star Wars movies, the R-rated
even Star Wars is trying to do it, and they can't.
Yeah, they still can't.
Yeah, right. The director for this movie is credited as Mike Hodges. He made Get Carter, The Terminal Man, Black Rainbow, a bunch of stuff in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. Nothing that I've really heard of. I don't know about you guys.
I've seen some of his stuff, but yeah, he's kind of the least interesting part about the making of this movie in terms of the amount of cogs that were turning at the same time, and just sort of the weirdness. Like the actor who played Flash Gordon, he was going crazy and like doing drugs and getting wild on set and like making demands. And they had like a break, I think, for Christmas, and they were supposed to do pickups after the break. They just fired him. They're like, fuck it. We'll figure it out. So they all the stuff they shot for pickups, they had to use a stand-in and I guess like a bleach blonde wig or whatever. And significant portions of the ADR, they just fired him outright. Like they weren't even like, you have to come back for the ADR and we'll pay you whatever.
Are you talking about Sam Jones?
Yeah, the guy who played Flash.
Sam J. Jones,
who's still working, by the way. I learned today.
Well, he's back because of Ted. Ted. He was like a private security officer for years and years, and he would do little bit parts here and there. But yeah, he was kind of blacklisted because he went directly against Dino De Laurentiis and just kind of got fucked.
So
I had a bit of Mandela effect with this movie. Maybe it's not really Mandela effect. I'm just misremembering. I always thought it was Dolph Lundgren. I'm sure I'm mixing up He-Man with Flash Gordon. But
here's the difference.
I was like, oh shit, that's not Dolph Lundgren.
Here's the difference. Sam J. Jones cannot act, and Dolph Lundgren can actually, put together some acting. I thought that the performance I thought this guy may as well just have been a football player. With the performance that he put out.
Yeah, it might have as well have been Dan Marino in Ace Ventura, which was
right.
Yeah, I mean, like as I was getting into it, I'm like, is he making the choice? Is he trying to be campy because he's basing his performance off of the like 40s television show. Is
Yeah,
that what's
it
going
didn't
on
feel
here?
out of place because I mean, let's talk about Princess Aura for a second, Ming's horned up daughter. Which so she comes in, she wants to fuck the shit out of Flash Gordon. Like she sees him, she's just like, "Oh, I like you so much. You're going to be mine," the whole fucking time. But and I was like, okay, she's like the evil, like seductress. She's the
Hey, this might be the first recorded superhero iteration of polyamory among
yeah,
the
she was
regular big
banging all the
know.
other leaders of all the other factions.
Yeah,
or at least two of them. I don't know if it was all of them.
I don't think that's
Timothy
what
Dalton.
I don't think you know what polyamory is because that's just her fucking a bunch of people.
No, I know, but Timothy Dalton was like, seemed like he was fine with it. He's like, you
kind of was, but he wanted her all to himself.
Yeah,
but, like
seemed more like an open relationship.
But I assumed that it was going to be what I'll
enough.
credit this movie with is that I assumed that because she sleeps around that she was going to be a bad guy. She was just like, I want to fuck that guy and fuck that guy, and like I thought she was going to be just as bad as Ming the Merciless. She turned out to be a fucking hero.
Mm-hmm.
So it's empowering, I guess. You can be promiscuous, but also
she had an abusive father. I mean, it's also implied when he like uses his Ming ring on what's her
the Ming ring.
When he uses his Ming ring on Dale, she starts doing like a sexy dance and moaning and groaning, and then Clytus is like, "Yes, she's almost as infected as your daughter," which means that Ming uses his ring on his daughter. That creepy weirdo.
It is. Man, there's so much about this movie. And I mean, now that we're on the topic of Ming and Aura, neither of them are Asian, but holy shit. Like, we address the racism in the room. This is a giant yellow face, even though they're space aliens. So I guess they're not really Asian, but I mean, they're named Ming.
We can...
a lot of the set design is most definitely inspired by like Chinese, just like the flag and like their sort of like architecture. It's all very like, and
I'm sure
not
that's
great
from the comics, but like
it definitely
I know it's 1980, but like hire some Asian actors, I guess.
Or just change it. Change it a
Yeah.
little bit so it's not so heavily influenced. But I guess that was the 80s as well, right? So like anti-communism was like massive. So who knows? It probably wasn't as problematic at the time. And just even looking at it today, you're like,
like they would either hire Asian actors or it's be less racist in general.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Asian people existed yet in 1980. Before we get to the body of the episode, so what I found about this movie as far as the budget goes, it was an estimated 20 million and made 27, but I've also read like 35
million. It made 27 in North America, and then it made more than that worldwide. It performed very poorly in North America, but it did a little bit better overseas. I'm not sure why that is. It's probably one of those things where it's probably pretty easy to watch with like shitty translations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's primarily visual and it very sort of like animalistic and visceral, and it's all just sort of like emotions and not necessarily dialogue.
Yeah, so the numbers are kind of all over the place from what I've read, but it seems like it did okay. I don't think it warrants a sequel, even though we get that big question mark at the end. I think there's more sequels to the to Flesh Gordon than there are to this.
I would have been okay with the sequel. I think that the movie is fun enough and there's enough to explore in the established universe from this that I would have been okay seeing more, but
it would have had to do better, like, because the sequel is not going to do as well as the original, and like it barely was profitable. It was,
but, that's
like I would have loved the sequel too. I'd love to watch part 2, but I get why they wouldn't make one.
Yeah,
John Carpenter saw this and he was like, I'll make a sequel. It's called Big Trouble in Little China.
Funny enough, they wanted Kurt Russell for Flash Gordon, and he turned it down because he was like, the character's too vapid and empty and like and one dimensional, and I'm not interested in playing this character.
And then he played Snake twice actually, but
Snake is arguably more interesting.
He's more interesting, but he's still very like.
I mean, he's more interesting because Kurt Russell played him. If Kurt Russell was in this movie, it might have been a more interesting character
for sure.
That's absolutely correct. Let's get into the plot and the body.
The body of the episode.
Now, I'm going to preface this before you hit your sting. I did fall asleep for about 15 to 20 minutes in like the latter half of the movie. So there's a gap, but I don't think it really negatively affected my understanding of what went on.
I was trying to edit a video while watching this, so there's lots of chunks that I'm like, what happened there?
The body of the episode.
I'd also like to preface all of this with I watched this movie like all the way through, and there's sections that they didn't put in the movie. Like there's just parts that just
Well, that's because the actor got fired and they couldn't film those scenes.
yeah. They just skip whole large swaths of storytelling. I'll start us off with saying that we got opening chaos and Ming's destruction begins. Emperor Ming the Merciless, ruler of the planet Mongo, initiates a series of natural disasters on Earth using his advanced technology, and his goal is to amuse himself by creating chaos. So right there, you already have like a cartoon character as a villain.
Yeah, he's doing it because he's bored. His first line is, Clytus, I'm bored. and Clytus finds him a planet to fuck with.
Yeah, with his amazing weather device, which has very specific settings and very like broad.
I call it the disaster blaster. I don't know if that's been said before, but I like it.
It probably, but not on this podcast.
Okay.
I like it. I also
Or the Ming Ring. Ming Ring, disaster blaster. I think they're both.
Ming Ring's great.
He also has the James Bond like crotch laser that freaks your bean.
Yeah.
Ring
There's also a
laser?
James Bond
yeah.
in this movie.
That's true.
The worst James Bond.
I don't agree. With
I
that.
don't know about all that. Timothy
Who's
Dalton was like
the James Bond who just did one?
That was
Roger.
Roger Moore.
No.
He did the
he's
most.
Roger
He did the
okay.
most James Bonds. What the fuck's his name? I wanted to say Rodney Butterfield, but that's definitely not his name. He has like a funny, very British sounding name.
It's not that important. We can move on.
Yeah.
Reginald Buttertip.
Nice.
Uh,
Got it.
The original villains of Buck Rogers' comic strip were the Mongols. In airships, Asians were considered exotic.
It was Timothy
villains.
Lazenby. Sorry.
Oh, Timothy.
Yeah.
In sci-fi of the 20s and 30s. Okay, so that explains the racism. And I see. Do you know what's funny? Timothy Dalton. The reason why I clocked him immediately is because he was technically my first Bond.
Yeah, me too. As License to Kill.
He's so handsome in this too. I mean, I guess he's handsome in the Bonds, but yeah.
Yeah. He should have got more Bond time. He only got 2, I think.
Yeah, he only got 2, but I think people were turned off by like the darkness of those movies, and it was like the late 80s or whatever, so it was like all about diamonds and drugs, and people were like, I want him to have shoes that have rockets.
Who were the villains? That wasn't the Russians. Was it the Libyans, like Back to the Future?
It was something.
It was some Cold War shit, but I don't think it was like the Russians themselves. I think it was like Russia adjacent.
Yeah, George Lazenby. Sorry,
George. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, he's also the one Bond that implied that James Bond is like a title and not a name kind of thing. Which
okay.
In his movie, he's like, this never happened to the other guy, implying that Sean Connery never got ditched by dames or whatever. Yeah. I don't remember much about I rewatched them recently too, but it was COVID and everything's a haze from that. The movies that I watched during that time didn't really stick in my brain a lot of the time.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot in the opening.
I think Christopher Walken's a villain in one of those ones, isn't he? He's like, well, diamonds are forever or something.
Something.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The Afghans and ex-Russian arms dealers in Living Daylights, Colombian cartels, and License to Kill. That's
Colombian,
actually.
Yeah.
Cartels. That's pretty modern.
No, it isn't. Cartels have been around forever.
I know they have, but it's in the current zeitgeist.
Right.
It's
because Donald Trump keeps talking about going to take him out or whatever.
Yeah.
Cartels.
Walken was the villain in A View to a Kill. So, Tim is kind of a guy in the chair. I like that. We got a fact checker.
Yeah.
Don't have to look anything up.
Yeah, perfect.
But that was Roger Moore, right? He's gonna look it up. You're gonna look it up. You do a kill, I believe Roger Moore.
Yeah.
Hey Tim, that's the hey Google. Yep, View to a Kill needed more cowbell. I got a Cuba. And the only description is more cowbell. There's not much in that opening bit. We do get him, I guess, going to a plane to go back to New York with the lady.
Yeah, I guess the football season's over, or the football season's about to start. So he's going to play for, I don't know. I'm going to guess the New York Giants because he's a big dude.
New York Jets.
Is it ever explained why they're both on a private
Giants are also
jet together?
Like, did more than one team, Jason?
Like, is she a real estate
Or
agent?
are you saying, Jason? Are you saying that they said Jets in the movie and I missed it?
Yes, it's the Jet.
Okay.
Also,
When you're a jet for till the end, and
till you're dead.
You're red. Yeah. And he's with a travel journalist named Dale Arden.
Wait, I thought she was a real estate agent.
She was a real estate agent.
Yeah.
And they're on
it has nothing to do with, like, it's just two people needed to go to New York. So let me tell you, people don't travel to New York too often. So little do they travel to New York that really the only flights into New York are like a private like 2-person plane.
Yeah.
Yes. Nobody goes to New York.
It's like the movie The Edge, where they have to go find that guy in the middle of the woods.
So
Charles.
Charles, you can't be the bear, Charles.
Can't be the bear, Charles. Charles, you should have been on for that episode. But I think Tim was on that episode, right? Oh, it was our friend of the show, Alex. It was our friend of the show, Alex. Hold on.
Coming, brother. Almost there.
That makes me laugh so hard. Anyway, they're on a small plane. It's caught in a strange storm caused by Ming, and the plane crashes into a remote scientist lab, which there's a lot of ex machina perfect.
This is when I figured out that I'm definitely gonna like this movie. Was this entire sequence of this doctor? I was like, okay, I understand the humor here now. I didn't know what I was playing with going into this. It's been so long since I've seen this movie. I wasn't sure if it was going to be sort of like the kookiness is going to be in the sets and the situations, but it's like, no, there's going to be some kooky characters as well. And it's not going to be cartoonishly over the top, but it's going to be cartoonish enough that you can have a good time with it.
What about
because
the titular Flash Gordon who wears his name on his chest?
Oh yeah, that was great. He just had a t-shirt that said Flash on it. So everyone would know in case
he's wearing his merch. He's probably got merch. He's a famous football
He doesn't
player.
need to buy shirts. He gets free merch.
Yeah, exactly.
I messaged Jason. I was 8 minutes into the movie, and I messaged him. I was like, I'm 8 minutes in, and I fucking love this. That was a bit premature.
I mean, the first 8 minutes.
Point, I was like, this is 10 out of 10, awesome. By the end, I mean, it dragged a bit.
You fell asleep. I think you
fell asleep.
I can see why, because like when you've got a scientist who's yelling, I was right.
Check the angular vector of the moon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And getting him to check moon vectors. And then, you know, his assistant is like, we got to get out of here. And then he immediately pulls a gun out. Like he just had a gun on him.
Yeah, he just had that gun.
Get in the rocket.
I wonder if the Simpsons, I said get in. I wonder if that's a reference to that.
Could be.
I mean, The Simpsons definitely has referenced Flash Gordon at least 100 times in the 37 years it's been on.
I always thought that one was a Conan O'Brien. Just I don't know.
I said get in,
but also like a George Howell or whatever that actor or the guy who was holed up in his penthouse was an insane person. The Spruce Moose apparently was a real thing.
Yeah,
that actor who went crazy. Anyway,
yeah, The Aviator's about him.
Yes,
the movie The Aviator.
Not George Howell, I forget his name, but
isn't it like Howard Hughes or something?
Yeah, Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
Right. So Dr. Hans Zarkov, a former NASA scientist who's also disgraced, as we find out through this movie, he believes Earth is under attack from aliens, and he forces Flash and Dale to board his homemade rocket to investigate and hopefully stop the threat
that he made in his like adjacent to his greenhouse.
Yeah, I forgot about the homemade rocket. That was.
I love this lab though. This lab set is amazing. Not for nothing. There's a lot of like bad green screen bullshit in this movie, but some of the sets are like Star Wars level.
Yeah, like I said, like it's a bad movie with a high budget. Like they were able to do some shit like at Queen and build nice sets.
I think the one thing this movie is missing that Star Wars has is practical locations, because everything is a set in this movie. Like
everything,
absolutely
like
everything.
1960s Batman cuckoo bananas,
which
like,
also one of the other producer and I believe one of the writers was like he was a Batman alumni. Like he came straight from the Batman show and was like, we're just making a Batman episode, a long Batman episode. It has to be kooky, crazy. It's got to be dancing and horny rings and all sorts of shit. The scientist has a gun, and it all works pretty well. The Fiddler on the Roof. The actor is from the movie The Fiddler on the Roof, the doctor. He's the one who sings the song, If I Was a Rich Man. Then he pulls a gun out and he says, get in the rocket.
Yeah.
So speaking of the gun and the rocket, so he's trying to get his assistant into the rocket with his gun. And I wrote this quote down. He says, get your toothbrush and whatever.
Yeah.
So is that a testament to good writing? Because this guy clearly, he wouldn't have had a speech planned.
Yeah.
So he's just like going off the top of his head, grab your toothbrush and whatever. We're getting to the fucking rocket ship. Or is it just really bad writing? Like they couldn't come up with something more awesome for him to say.
Maybe they expected him to like riff or something, or maybe the guy just ad-libbed that line like he couldn't remember it. But the delivery on it is absolutely golden. Like that's something that would be in a modern comedy today, and it's still funny.
Toothbrush or whatever.
Or whatever, yeah.
Because I'm kidnapping you into space.
But those are the two things he could think of that you might need when you're going on a space adventure: is a toothbrush and something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like how
they want to bring your Game Boy. Bring your Game Boy. It's a long trip.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's trying to take just her along, and he falls in trying to get the gun away from him. And they have one of the worst choreographed fight scenes I've ever seen in my life. And the camera is like right up on them too, because there's no room. Like clearly the cameraman was in like
Listen, I told you that the set designer didn't give a shit about camera placement. He's like, I'm building an actual rocket.
Yeah. No, you open up one of the sides. Like, nope, we're going in the rocket.
At that point, though, he's trying to convince his assistant that you got to come with me. We're going to fucking space, and I have a gun. And then a random football player and real estate agent crash into his greenhouse. And he's like, I don't need you. I'll bring his assistant. And I have no idea who they are instead.
Sorry,
his trained assistant.
This is also very, very funny. Is the assistant starts to like just leave, and he's pointing the gun at him. And then he starts running away, and he's like, "Why are you running?" Like his assistant is just fleeing, and he doesn't stop him, even though he's pointing a gun at him. It's so funny.
Well, no, I respect the scientist for that. That keeps him being a good guy because I mean, he is threatening him, but what good is killing him going to do? Exactly. Like that just makes him a murderer. Like if he really isn't going to go to space and the gun isn't convincing him, then
it's also just funny that he's still kind of pointing the gun at him, being like, "Where are you going?" And he's running away, and the assistant is not responding. He's like, "I'm just getting out of here. This guy's not going to kill me.
Shoot me if you got it. I'm going to die here. I'm going to die in space one way."
So it's a fortuitous turn of luck that the football player and the real estate agent show up because he needs somebody to hold down the button or whatever. It's like it requires one person to hold down the button while I pull this switch. So
like what would happen if there weren't those people in there?
He would be fucked. So
he would just float off into space and the credits would roll.
But I think that the way I would look at it is that he's probably like this rocket is probably regulated to like weight, and this football player probably weighs so much, so he's probably like, I need to take the woman who's lighter because this guy probably weighs like almost 300 pounds of muscle. He's gonna fuck with my fuel reserves or whatever. This is what I'm thinking. So it makes sense.
He was going to use the woman as like a flesh trade.
My brain. That's where my brain first went. But then I took what I knew about the scientist so far, which is 5 minutes of him wielding a gun, and I was like, he seems like a logical guy. He's probably worried about the weight.
The thing that's great about this opening bit is we get a great mixture of like miniatures for the practical effects, and then also full-sized practical effects, like when the plane crashes into the lab and the spaceship. But when the spaceship's in space, it's like clearly a miniature. And then like we were talking about it earlier, the sky effects look really great. But what I'm thinking through this whole part is immediately we missed a beat about why the girl and Flash are just smitten. It's one of those situations in movies where they're just because there's no.
They're both hot. He's a star and she's pretty, and he was smitten by her earlier. He mentions
on the tarmac. He saw her while he was waiting for the plane. Yeah, he got a little grin on his face. My fourth note is so far Flash Gordon's just a horn dog at an airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought because at this point I still thought Flash Gordon was like a legit superhero. Like I didn't realize he was just some football player that got thrust into hero.
I also fully forgot that. I must have known it at some point, but I definitely had that moment too where I'm going, is he just like a guy who's on TV? And then he's like, I play for the New York Jets. And then later there's that whole sequence where he's using a helmet shaped like a football as a weapon.
Yeah.
Also, I have
even
a
the first
story
fight
about
that he gets into, he's not doing so great, and then someone, I think, the scientist throws him something shaped like a football.
Yeah, it's like.
And then he's amazing at combat because he's holding what feels like a football.
Yeah, that whole sequence was a fortuitous sort of like light bulb moment on set. So they had all these egg sort of things. I guess there's supposed to be offerings to Ming of all of the worlds that worship him.
Yeah, they sure look like watermelons. I wrote down where the fuck did the watermelon come from before I got a better look at it.
They are like big Fabergé eggs, and I guess the idea is that like Ming goes around and like repopulates planets and like makes children and puts them down as rulers or whatever. So like them offering eggs, I guess, is like them offering their planets. I don't know. That's what I read from this, but
it's just you're reading too much into it. It's just Fabergé eggs. He's got
that's all. But the original fight was just supposed to be a regular fist fight, like just a brawl. And then while they were on set, he was like playing with it like a football, and the director was like, "Wait a minute, he's a football player in the movie. Let's make this a whole football player fight where he's playing football and using one of these eggs as a weapon." And
because it really was just like, I mean, he doesn't know, he's a football player, he doesn't know combat, but put a football in his arms. Now he knows how to fight these space aliens. So it was kind of like that kind of launched the believability question mark of the rest of the movie, him being able to fight people. No, we'll just call them Fabergé eggs. We don't
Ming Dynasty space orbs.
Space orbs.
I'm gonna consider them Fabergé eggs. Space Fabergé eggs.
Before we get to that fight scene though, they do arrive on Mongo. They're taken prisoner. There's so many random just cuts that people as prisoners in this movie. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, they're taken prisoner like 6 times throughout the movie.
Yeah. It kind of reads as a space Oz is what I wrote. Like they kind of do a Wizard of Oz like transition into
I thought
a
you meant the
world.
prison show.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, they're all getting well, never mind. There's that weird guy who has like laser hands, which I thought was kind of a cool effect. Flash tries to be friends and gets beaten up for his efforts. The trio arrives on planet Mongo, where they're captured by Ming's forces. Zarkov is brainwashed. Dale is chosen as for Ming's harem, and Flash is sentenced to death.
The brainwashing didn't take though, because he was able to withstand the brainwashing by just not wanting to be brainwashed.
But then he's like called a traitor later in the movie, so they thought it worked.
Well, I mean, he does a pretty good job of pretending like he's.
Oh, it fooled me.
Yeah. Except the very first thing he says is like incorrect, and he corrects himself like right afterwards. So it's like, did this work? And he's like, it worked. Hail Ming or whatever.
Or whatever I'm supposed to say now.
Yeah, the laser.
I agree.
I guess it's like reformatting his memories. I guess is that what that was supposed to be? I was a little bit confused.
Yeah, it was a bit of a Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah, they're like, we're gonna send you down a road of your own memories, and we're going to implant memories of Ming being everything you care about in your mind.
That's a good point. They don't convey that, but we do basically see his whole life in reverse, right to him being born.
Yeah, and that's what he said. He thought of things. What was it he said he did? He like thought of things that he thought they wanted to see or something.
Right.
So like they didn't get his real memories or something like that. Is how he avoided being.
Well, it's like Dark City.
Yeah, I gotta watch that again. That's
when Kiefer Sutherland puts himself into his mind to train him. He's like, I'm going to put fake memories of me training you. Hey, John, it's me.
Matrix. Very Matrixy.
I'm a firefighter. I'm teaching you how to use your mental.
It's a pretty good Sutherland. Pretty good Sutherland, you do.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. He's got some good one sentence
Well,
impressions.
his character in that movie is
body.
Yeah,
that's my
Did you guys notice that Ming had two kinds of, he had a few different kinds of guards. He had the weird guys on that were a computer. He had the guys with the skull masks, which were
the guy with those
cool.
like long nose, like hood things.
That looked like Shy Guys from Superhero.
Oh, interesting. I guess they don't have white masks on. They're just wearing red. But I thought they looked like the Birdie.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Birdie.
Birdo. Yeah.
I think they look more like, you guys have watched The Muppet Show at some point in your lives, right?
Oh,
they have those,
of course.
The Mana aliens that have the big dude in front of the. That's what they reminded me of.
I was like, these guys are pig men, right? Because when they're getting attacked, they make weird pig noises.
Like
when they get killed, they like squeal like a pig.
But also when they're like walking and patrolling, they're like, mark. Like weird pig noises. I like those guys.
There was a third Earthbound game that had soldiers that had pig. They were called pig masks, and now that you're saying that, I'm thinking like they kind of looked like them. That's interesting. I wrote a note in my notes straight up.
I mean, realistically, they look like Nazi gas mask guys. Like that's
that's a good point too.
That was probably the plan.
This is Star Wars, but insane. It's just a note that I wrote to myself
it's
here.
Insane.
And it also kind of reminds me of like Dune, with how weird everything is. Like, you know how even like the David Lynch Dune and even the new Dunes, it's like a pretty standard sci-fi, but then things are just like weird, you know, just kind of like
that's kind of, I mean,
and not as tropey as other sci-fi.
It just goes to show you that you can take any sci-fi concept and it can end up looking like this, which, you know, I don't necessarily think this movie looks bad, but it definitely looks cheesy compared to something like the modern day Dune or even the David Lynch Dune, which doesn't. And it's just all about the sensibility of like where you're placing the camera, how you're lighting things. You could have something that looks completely goofy in one situation and have it look amazing and scary and gritty and frightening in another. It's all about how you approach it, right? And I think
I'd also love to see the I'm sure that there were storyboards drawn for this. I want to see the artwork that was drawn for this movie.
Well, like I said, the guy who designed the sets and all the costumes was the same person, and he refused to read the script and just he based everything off of his own imagination and stuff that he got out of the comic book. So it's this sort of like modern representation of like a late 70s man just being like, I'm gonna do this my way and I'm gonna make it fucking weird. And because Dino De Laurentiis like spoke so highly of this man, anytime the director or DOP would be like, you can't do that, he'd be like, yes I can. So like it was like this weird unwieldy set designer who's just running around set being like, this is what you got to work with. Dino said I could. It's so strange and funny to think about that. Like the making of this movie must have been a fucking nightmare. Like imagine just being the DOP, like just trying to light something, and then this guy comes in, he's like, "Oh, the trees are going to be pink." It's like, can we make them green? No.
At least it wasn't Island of Dr. Moreau. That sounds worse. But like, this is a second place, like second worst movie to have been involved in making. I'm pretty sure.
Like, this movie was a box office bomb, right? Like it barely broke even.
Well, it broke even. That's not a bomb. It profited.
It made enough money, and it probably made so much money off of the soundtrack. I guarantee it probably made more money off of the album than the. And I wonder how that works. I wonder if like
because that's not included in the like gross of the film.
Exactly. But there also would have been merchandising, and I mean George Lucas did the whole merchandising genius deal that he did to make $1 billion.
And all the numbers that I saw,
the movie,
and all the numbers,
licensing money,
and all the numbers I saw, it actually includes modern day like Blu-ray sales. You can see it. You can see numbers where there's another couple $1 million included in like it being re-released on Blu-ray later.
Yeah, but I mean, box office is not the same. Yeah, like you can find numbers that include everything because there are movies that like would have been made in the 80s, and sometimes they don't make their money back until like the year 2017. It's like finally we made our money back. I think there's the new Kids in the Hall show that came out a couple of years ago. Yeah, they made one movie in I think it was the 90s called Brain Candy. And like the joke in that show is like the man who financed that movie, the movie finally became profitable by like a couple of sets. Like, we're finally in the green. We've made 5 sets. That's like, well, I guess it's time we bring them back from the dead.
There's a lot of there's tie-in from Brain Candy with that TV show. Interesting side note, I met Bruce McCullough today.
Oh man, he's my favorite kid in the hall. How did that go? And how did
so TIFF is happening right now. There was people everywhere. He was standing on a corner fiddling with his phone. I think he was looking for a restaurant or something. And I've been like, that is a celebrity. I'm not gonna fuck with that guy, but I rarely ever get the like, get it up to like say something. And I just walked up to him and I said, I kind of like leaned down to his level because he's a short guy. And he was also on his phone. And I said, huge fan. And he goes, thank you, sir. And looked back at his phone. And I was like, that's the end of this interaction.
That sounds about
yeah.
right.
I'm going to
He was walking. At a show, like an improv show at Bad Dog Theater with that I was also in the audience for like 4 years ago. I couldn't get up the gall. I couldn't do it. I wanted to. Pam was with me, my wife.
It is weird, man. Sometimes you get like too starstruck, even when it's like not even a massive celebrity.
Yeah.
Like there are some celebrities that I'm like so unfazed by them. Like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I'll talk to this guy. But then there's other ones that there's just something a little bit too special about it, and I guess you're like worried you're going to say something weird, or like you just can't even get over yourself.
For me, it was that first impression. Like, this is the first impression. If I do it now, like there's no going back on the first impression. And I had
a panic attack when I met Anthony Daniels, the man who plays C-3PO. I was like, oh god, I'm having a panic attack. I gotta get out of here. And I went, oh, yeah, I ran away.
We had Mark Little on a couple weeks ago, and he's a bigger deal than like, I just know him from Halifax and stuff, and he was on Blossom Buddies, and like I can talk to him, but like I see clips of him on like these massive, like he was on fucking Conan, like he's pretty big, and I just have no problem talking to that guy. But for whatever reason, sometimes you'll see somebody out in the world like that, and you're just paralyzed.
Yeah, I remember when
I saw Willem Dafoe in Halifax one year, and I looked at him, and I kind of like we made eye contact, and that was enough. I can't go.
All right,
Willem Dafoe.
I could never walk up to Willem Dafoe. What the fuck is that conversation going to look like?
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Willem Dafoe. Do you want to come to Easter dinner?
My name's William.
William.
Everyone's been pronouncing it incorrectly
the whole fucking time.
this whole time.
World Mind makes a good point here. Like if I met Roddy Piper, I would melt into a puddle.
I watched a Roddy Piper movie last night, and it was one of the worst things I've ever watched, but it was still pretty fun. It was called Sci-Fighter. I don't know.
I've heard it. I have not seen it, but I've heard of it.
I was watching it. I'm like, this is definitely shot in Toronto, right? And then a bunch of Canadian actors started showing up. I'm like, oh god, yeah, this is embarrassing to watch. It was trying so hard to be Blade Runner, but it just couldn't do it.
Don't try to be Blade Runner.
Never try.
Star Wars.
Down to him wearing a big brown coat, but it just was it was all floppy and like thin, and you're like, no.
To get back to the movie, that was a nice little.
I once met
yeah. Well, you met Patrick Wilson, or not Patrick Wilson, the guy from Suits, the escape room. You had a bunch of people come in.
Actually, he was one because I didn't know who he was because I'd never seen Suits, and he was at the games and he played and he loved them. And then like we exchanged telephone numbers because he was really interested in the games and wanting to make one. So I was like texting with him, and I didn't even realize the level of fame that he was at until I had already established a comfortable relationship with him, which made all the difference. That's what you got to do, is just never fall to celebrity. If you're like in love with somebody, it's going to be really hard to talk to them. But all the other people like Izzy and Rachel and all them were like, oh my god, he's from Suits. And I was like, what's Suits lawyer show? I've never seen it.
Yeah, I was a real fanboy when I met Billy Corgan. But then I was eating in a restaurant and Russell Peters showed up, and it was in Toronto. And I was just like, leave him alone. My sister and her friend followed him and his crew into the next room. I was just like, it's Toronto. Comedians are going to show up at restaurants.
Yeah.
But it depends who it is and who you are, I guess.
I think just as one last one where it kind of goes from being starstruck to being fine with it. Phil Guerrero from YTV.
He also came to the
PJ Fresh Phil.
Yeah, he I met him and I immediately was like, you were a huge part of my childhood. And he was like, okay. And then I was like, oh, just be chill with this dude. And then he said a bunch of like stuff that I can't repeat. And then I was like, oh, this guy's just like the most normal person now who does commercials and
He came into the games as well. I met him. He was kind of rude, but he was also, like you said, he was just sort of like a chill, kind of weird guy where you're just like,
a funny stoner.
Yeah, he's just being himself. He also, like,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure he was partaking in the wacky tobacco before he came in.
Absolutely.
Him and his friends all stunk of weed.
Yeah. I think I was more stoked to meet the other VJ. Fuck, I can't remember his name now, but like the ginger guy that was one of the other hosts.
Yeah,
he was from one of the Super Kick shows.
I think it's Paul. Is it PJ
Paul? Yeah, yeah.
Do you guys remember what PJ stands for?
Photo jockey.
Jockey, yeah.
Phono jockey. I don't know. I knew it at one point.
Film jockey with a PH.
That's what I was about to say. The movie Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon from 1980, starring Sam J. Jones.
We're almost into Act 2 here, so I'm just gonna. I want to point out that there was a sequence here that was so insane. I wrote it out like this: Flash is there, right before he gets executed. He watches that there's almost a gang fight between multiple gangs. A coup.
They're not
freeze
gangs.
magic.
Factions.
Well, they're different factions, different races.
They're both royalty. One led by a man with wings, and another one. Yeah, there's a baron.
There's almost a race war. Sorry, a coup. Freeze magic, blue blood, an emperor stabbing, and a snitch drone. It's just a lot happening.
Love the snitch.
There's so much happening all the time. Like, I lost the plot because there's just so much happening all the time.
When you see an actor and you're like, that guy's in stuff, but he dies so fast that you're like, maybe he wasn't. Maybe I'm just like not reading that face right. So the guy who tries to kill the emperor, I'm like, his face is very distinctive. I definitely have seen him before. He must be in something. And then I'm like, oh yeah, he's in all the Harry Potter movies. He's just like one of those.
Yeah, that guy, that fucking the big guy.
His name's King in the Harry Potter movies. He's Kingsley Shacklebolt.
Wasn't there someone
what about Deep Roy as the Gimp?
Oh yeah, I saw Deep Roy too. I forgot to. Yeah, I wrote that in my notes. But yeah, Deep Roy it's always nice to see him. This was sort of like his fucking time to shine in Hollywood until Tim Burton sort of brought him back and was like, Deep Roy was in all my favorite movies when I was.
Yeah, and then there's Brian Blessed, or I don't know if his last name's pronounced Blessed.
It's Blessed, yeah.
Is it? Yeah, he was fucking awesome. I loved him in this.
He's
so much.
Funny. Yeah, he's such a funny guy.
End combat when he keeps going dive.
Yeah, dive. Yeah, and just like his face is like wildly expressive. Like his mouth gets so big. And all his like little sort of slapsticky moments where the camera's just cutting to him and he's just like, and like hitting people with his cane and like tripping.
He understood the assignment. He was like, we're making a comic book movie. Like really at this point, as far as comic book movies goes, there's Superman, and that's like it, right? Like there was serials in like the 30s and 40s, but as
I was also gonna mention
right?
that Valkyrie boss guy. What's his name? Voltan.
We're talking about right now. Brian Blessed.
That's what I'm saying. They almost Zeus in the Thor Love and Thunder was almost characterized the same as this character in this. I noticed, and I'm wondering if they took inspiration from this.
That entire sequence in Thor is a Flash Gordon reference, like them.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Right.
And armor and shit. Yeah. That whole thing is. But yeah, Brian.
I want to just touch back on Harry Potter for a second because Robbie Coltrane is in this as Man at Airfield, and he is fucking what's his name, Hagrid.
Oh, is he?
I noticed. I was going to ask you guys about that because there's a guy who is clearly Robbie Coltrane who walks up to the plane and then walks. You just see his back, but you see the side of his face for a sec.
Yeah, and when I was watching, that was the moment when I was like, "Is that fucking that guy that I know?" And I had to look it up.
That's the same as in American Werewolf in London. There's an actor in that who's in it for like 2 seconds in the bar scene at the start, and he's that comic actor that was in that sitcom where it's like him and another dude. They live in an apartment together. He's like a famous He's a Rick Mayall.
Yeah,
he's a famous.
Everybody's got to start somewhere. Everybody's got to start somewhere.
Sorry, hold on. Are you saying Rick Mayall was in American Werewolf?
Yeah, he's in it for like he's in that scene at the beginning where they first walk into the bar, and I'm like, that's him. His fucking eyes all janked out.
That's so fucking awesome. You guys watch
Clearly
the
him.
I'm getting off track.
Okay, let's get here. I'll get us back on track.
That's when they said the name of the movie in the movie.
I had more Brian Blessed to talk about, but
well, that's part of the movie. We can talk about Brian.
Yeah, at 26:14, they say his name. Sorry, Steve. Let's talk about Brian Blessed.
No, one of our viewers messaged me today and was like, I met Brian Blessed once. He called me Captain. He called me Captain. And I'm like, oh, that seems like such a thing that he would call you. Know?
Yeah, hello, I've been slowly making my way through Black Adder again, so that's where I recognized him from.
He was also in Episode 1, Star Wars Episode 1. Brian Blessed. He plays Boss Nass. I don't know if you're familiar with Boss Nass, the king of the Gungans.
Oh, it's been a movie.
I am.
Gungan style.
He's a full CG. He's a full CG monster, and he just goes like,
"You go to the planet called
to see the queen. We all wound up on Tatooine."
You're gonna get us struck with a strike.
I wrote, is that deep? Whatever.
Deep
the Oompa Loompa.
He's shown for 1 second, but he was also shown for 1 second in a lot of movies of this era.
Oh, he was shown for 1 second like several times though. He was like throughout the movie, but very briefly each time he appeared on screen.
But he didn't have like a never-ending story level character arc where he had a snail that he raced on that we all wanted to see him ride on top of.
A never-ending story, yeah. Actually, just a quick side note. There's a video game called I can't remember what it's called.
Earthbound, Final Fantasy.
No, it's not.
The two that you talk about every episode.
But there's a character that rides a snail. You're like, you go down to like an underground world, and he rides a snail around, and all I can think of never ending story. It's that one where you like you fight things in the level, and then it recreates stuff in the like town. Fuck, why can't I remember the game?
I don't know what game you're talking about.
Come back to us next week with your answers.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, that's the back on the fucking rails button.
Is that the back on track thing? Let's get this show on the.
Yeah. Okay. So just to end out the first act, Flash's execution, rebellion sparks. Flash is executed by gas chamber, but is secretly revived by Ming's daughter, Princess Aura, who is captivated by him.
So bad.
She plans to use him to overthrow her father.
I like this this sequence. There's a weird guy that comes up and he whispers something to Flash.
The game's called Soul Blazer. Soul Blazer.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I didn't quite catch what he whispered to Flash. I think he said like, "This will make you all right" or something like that.
Rumor has it is the same thing that Bill Murray whispered to Scarlett Johansson in Lost in Translation.
Oh, I see. That's true. She was all right too at the end. Some good gas. The gas looked pretty good. I was impressed, and it's scary. I would be scared in that situation. I'm also kind of like, they put him in an electric chair, but then gassed him like a gas chamber. So weird.
The backup, just in case.
Instead of creating like an interesting new way to kill somebody in an execution situation, they're like, or go way back to like beheading. They're like, no, let's combine.
I bet it was like, you know what I bet it was? I bet wherever they were filming, I guess they were probably filming in Hollywood, but I guess
no, they filmed in London.
Oh, okay.
Pinewood Studios.
But I bet I bet they were like getting rid of the death penalty, and they were like, well, we got these extra electric chairs that we're going to sell for cheap. I bet that's what happened there.
Right. They were like, we're either going to burn this or we're going to reuse it. Yeah.
Let's reuse it for this movie. Because
I mean, they're making shit up as they go along. The whole football thing you mentioned earlier, like really, I think they just came across a cheap electric chair.
I just noticed in my notes we skipped over that, but we did talk about it. Like we covered it.
Yeah, the football fight. Yeah, we got it. He fights like he's in a football game. He's just tackling.
It's like a football to Flash Gordon is like spinach to Popeye. Like get him a football and he can take on anything.
Yeah. And
So I
also, Dale turns into like a cheerleader at that point for some reason.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Like,
that
Flash,
was-
you can do it, Flash, Flash.
Yeah,
Flash.
that's I think that's
that was
one part we
too
didn't
cheesy
mention.
and campy for me. I didn't like that bit.
I also want to let you guys know that Ming's name in Flesh Gordon is Wang, and
Oh,
I was looking up that movie during my notes, and I start referring to him in my notes as Wang. I wrote,
is it Wang?
Wang's daughter is kissing everyone.
But
He's back.
Is it just Wang the Merciless, or is it Wang the Worceless, or what?
Something like I don't know.
Oh,
It's just Wang. But there's somebody called like the asshole destroyer. Like it's crazy.
sounds great.
Yeah.
So they kill him in quotation marks, and then they have like a plaque written in English. So I guess everybody just writes in English in the world or in the galaxy, which is fun. But the name Flash Gordon is written like the title card too. It's like, and like his shirt. So like they were respectful enough to write his name in
his merch font.
Yeah. But it's like killed by Ming the Merciless. He's in like a classic coffin, like a Dracula coffin, basically. And then they show up and they open it up and they inject him again and to bring him back to life. But the guy that's with him, who also is exiled or whatever, they then reveal that weekends exist in this universe, which I found very delightful. It's like, can we do this again next weekend? And I'm like, wait a minute, there's weekends in Ming's empire. Like he gives the people the weekend off. He's not that bad after all, you know.
He's not that
But
merciless.
the weeks are like 37 days long.
Oh shit. Okay.
So not that great.
Put this uniform on before the lizard men come back to take you away.
Yeah, I love that part. I wrote down just like lizard. I wrote down LOL lizard men because
oh man, the lizard men.
Like everything in this movie looked great except for the lizard men because it was just like the dude's face painted red inside a giant lizard mouth, but there's clearly a man's face. It didn't make.
But it's not even like
sense,
it's just.
I love it.
I think even if it was just painted red and you could see the facial features, like that would have been better. Like he was wearing. I don't know. Let me finish. If it was like if it was just painted red and it like looked like they were wearing that as a costume, like, and that's the idea is that they're just men who wear lizard skins as like as their outfit. That would be more interesting than whatever they were trying to do, which is like the back of their throat has eyes and like
it was like a swing and a miss for sure.
Yeah,
again,
like
that costume design
when we get there, which that's where we're at now, he's dipped down into the swamp. There's like weird lizard men in the background, and that's what you're describing, right? Like they've got like
throughout the whole fucking movie, these lizard men.
They're just another faction. I think they're another kingdom.
The first person that dies in this movie is a lizard man. He gets shot by the snitch droid or whatever. The one that's floating around and he's like, lizard man escaped, and he just vaporizes him or whatever.
I really want a Grand Theft Auto game that's just Flash Gordon and all the different factions are just these.
Yeah, you've got to get the vulture men on your team.
The fucking the weird like guys in red who are like kind of vaguely racist Chinese.
Now
and
there is a Flash Gordon video game from 1986 for the Commodore 64.
Oh my god! Is it like a platformer? What is it?
I just looked this up now, so I don't know.
Point and click adventure.
It's Commodore 64, so it's probably a platformer. 90% of the games on that computer were platformers. The Wikipedia is extremely limited. It doesn't even tell me what there's 3 levels.
This was a game.
Yeah, basically. There's a maze, and there's 3. The first level is a maze, the second level is a beat 'em up, and the third level is a 3D style shooter. Oof. I'm gonna play it for my new podcast. Hey, have you played this one?
Yeah, hey, did you play this one? We had a
spin-off.
We had a spin-off briefly that
there was a time where we considered every time we find a video game for a movie that's tied in, we play it on stream and like go, but that would be almost every episode sometimes where you're like, no, is it worth it?
They made video games of a lot of movies.
Yeah,
especially a lot of the like shitty stuff.
The 80s and 90s was just every movie had a video game tie-in.
So yeah, Aura takes Flash to Arborea on that weird motorcycle thing, the Forest Kingdom, to seek help from Prince Baron.
Oh, I thought he was a baron. He's Prince Baron. He's not a baron. Oh,
Yeah.
God.
B-A-R-I.
Also, she calls him Barry, right?
I didn't pick up on that, but it wouldn't.
I heard Aura call him Barry at one point, but I may have just misheard.
It's the pet name. It's just this,
Yeah.
But he lives in a tree. He's a Barry.
Oh, that's
That's how
probably clever writing behind this fucking movie for sure. That's definitely what they were going for.
But she only calls him it once in the whole movie. However, Baron is jealous of Flash and initially tries to kill him. A rivalry develops between them.
And they do the most boring challenge in any movie ever, where it's them just sticking their hand in a hole, and it's filmed so boringly. You're like, oh God.
But we do get that scene of the rite of passage kid who's like, I'm going to try it now, and he dies immediately.
Yeah,
but this thing that bites you, I guess, it drives you so crazy that you wish for death as soon as you're bitten.
Yeah. But Flash is too smart. He's the smartest football player to ever play for the Jets.
Yes.
Smarter than Dan Marino.
Yeah. Dan Marino would have fucking fucked up. He would have taken Ming's deal and become the king of Earth or whatever.
Yeah. I wrote Laura's trying to fuck. I don't know why I wrote Laura, because her name is Aura. The other woman is being fed to Ming, and the women give their drugs. Oh yeah, the scene where
it's like a weird green liquid where you drink it and you're horny or whatever. It like makes you all right.
It makes
fucking Ming.
Yeah, it makes getting essayed a little bit better.
It makes it so you won't care, I guess. It's just like, all right, let's do this.
So it's heroin. It's an opioid, probably.
Yeah.
And then, but then she gives it to one of the other harems, and it knocks.
Well,
her
that's
out.
what. Yeah, there is that scene. I want to talk about this first part though, where Aura has some sort of mind meld device where he can talk. They only use it once in the whole movie, which I thought was weird for how crazy this ability is. But they're talking to each other over their mind. And I guess Ming can tap into that because they do say we have to cut this connection. We have to sever this connection.
No,
but
they say
before
hang
that
up,
happens,
which is
we have to
funny.
hang up. Yeah. But before that, she's kissing his neck and kissing him, and he goes like, "Wow, I'm getting really turned on right now." And Dale's like, "Wait, what was that?"
And then he's like, "I wasn't talking to you.
I wasn't talking to you." There's some like subtle comedy in this movie that's like pretty funny.
I agree. I think the movie is very funny. There's lots of very funny bits.
Yeah, there's a point. I don't know if you've got to it yet, because I didn't note when exactly it happened. But at some point, fucking Timothy Dalton calls Princess Aura a lying bitch. I didn't expect that. It's pretty G-rated. Like Flash is very wholesome in his dialogue, and then just fucking Baron or whoever is just like, "You lying bitch."
Yeah. I think you're supposed to be, because you haven't really been given a reason to dislike Timothy Dalton at this point. So I think they're kind of giving you little micro doses of like, this guy's kind of a dick, so you should probably dislike him. And then you get
That's
more
like
and more of
the
that.
swear word in the movie, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think bitch at that time you could get away with it in a PG. You could even get away with a fuck.
There was no PG yet, right?
Well, there was PG and then there was R. There was nothing in between.
Yeah, that's true.
This
true.
was
PG-13
before
and 14A are like.
I think this is like just slightly before PG-13 as well.
Yeah, PG-13 was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Was what brought that one in.
That's so that they could get away with some swears and blood. That was another issue.
Ripping hearts out of people's chests. Jesus Christ, that was insane.
They had too much blood in this movie. They had to keep touching things up because the sensors
make it blue or green.
But it was like the scene where they're having like the spiky platform whip battle. They kept putting too much blood, and they had to like keep painting over things, and because the blood was getting everywhere. It was real blood too. Those are real spikes.
I was gonna say, it's like they're really falling on those dumb spikes all over the place.
Yeah, they lost like 17 stuntmen in the making of the movie.
Well, I also looked into that because I was like, that looks pretty dangerous, and it's actually them. You know, like movies now, they cover everything up pretty well, where you're never really concerned about the person in the scene because you're just like, I don't know what's fake and real anymore. But when you watch something like this, you're like, those T guys are the real people. They're not stuntmen. They're on this platform with legitimate spikes that don't look like they're rubber because they're not like wiggling around or whatever when they come out. And it was I looked into it and they had to practice for 3 weeks doing that fight on there to do it safely, and it was suspended 30 feet in the air, and I was like, 30 feet is maybe too high. Is this right? Like I had to like double check my like this can't be true. But it was like if you fell off, there was like mats and stuff if you fell, but it was like very, very high up
for no good reason.
Yeah,
except probably the set designer or the
yeah, he was like, no, Dino said I could do it.
So Aura gets the great idea that, she's going to get essayed tonight by Ming. So she's like, hey, slave girl, come over here and try some of this wow juice. That's what I'm calling it in my notes. And the slave girl's like, hey, we're slaves. We can't drink that. And Aura's like,
girl here.
Live a little, basically. And she's like, okay.
She says we're all girls here, too.
Yep, we're all girls here. We got to put together and do our drugs together.
Mm-hmm.
And Ming fully walks in and is like, oh, ready to go, and then moves a pillow out of the way, and it's just this wasted woman. Yeah,
I just don't understand how that woman was like taken out instantly by 1 cup, and she was drinking it, and it didn't do anything to her. Maybe she's got that real estate drug money. She's just like, I've been doing earth drugs for years.
She brought a huge bag of cocaine with her.
Yeah.
She fucking
like, all right, your turn.
Yeah. That character from The Good Place, like the lawyer who's like in the middle of nowhere or whatever. I watched that show, Jason. That's a show I've watched.
It's a good show.
It's a great TV show. It was a great show. It had Ted Danson and it had lots of other people. A character named Jason, who's an idiot, just like me.
Jason Mendoza.
Yeah.
He was in The Acolyte. That was a good show that everyone hated.
I haven't watched it yet, but I plan on it. I went a little bit ahead in my notes from where we're talking, so I'm just sort of I kept writing her name as Elba because I missed that it was Aura. Aura did the switcheroo with the slave, the old heroin switcheroo. That's what I wrote. Zarkov and Aura escape, but she doesn't know he's been brain warped. Or has he? Then I have Flash and Baron travel to Sky City, ruled by Prince Voltan and his Hawkmen. Voltan is reluctant to join the fight against Ming, but is convinced after seeing Flash's determination and leadership.
This is where I was editing, and it gets a little foggy, but I was like,
all right, I'll get us through this. I also
wrote the boar worms.
Not the boar worms. Not the boar worms. I also wrote some notes about how Orborea looked kind of cool. I like the tree universe with the Peter Pan guys.
What about our friend from Rocky Horror Picture Show? Did you like him with his double flute?
Was that the guy
from
Rocky Horror?
Yeah,
the guy one of the two aliens.
He was like the right hand man to Baron.
But who was he in Rocky Horror?
He's like the butler guy who's one of the aliens.
Oh, he's like the okay. Yep. The kid with the rite of passage, Tim Dalton, his name is Barry. We covered all of this already. I feel like there's a scene. Okay. I feel like there's a scene missing because suddenly Flash is getting murdered. The princess is then getting whipped. And not the boar worm scene happened.
Well, this is all of our characters are in trouble. Everyone's in trouble. And for some reason, I think what it is with Flash Gordon is like they need to make him go into the temple of the tree of his own accord so that they can punish him or whatever. Like there's like some rule on the planet. And it's not really made truly clear, but they send down Rocky Horror riffraff to go into the cage and be like, I stole a key and we can use the key to get out of here, and then we can climb up and get some weapons up there. And so he like leads him up there so that he goes in, and Flash is like, where's the weapons? And he's like, there's one right up your booty, boy. He has like a knife at his back or whatever. So there must be some sort of like rule about it's like a whole because they have like a priest there who's like, you came in here of your own accord, and now you must stick your hand in this hole. And if the snake in there bites you, then you're fucked. And then James Bond is like, do you whimper from the challenge? I'll kill you now, or you'll beg me to kill you later. And you're like confused, or at least I was confused. It's like, what is going on here? Like, there's so much shoe leather here that really doesn't necessarily need to be here. They do the same thing in Dune, but it's all ambiance set.
That's what I was going to say.
Like horror. Yeah. And then this is just like a bunch of people talking about it. You're like, okay, got it. Stick your hand in the hole.
I also thought it was funny that like when Baron challenges him to like the rite of passage challenge, he literally says some shit like Flash is like, yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Just the most normal like response to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it shows to like the lack of the charisma of the actor, where like these moments that like there's never a moment in this movie where I think Flash is charming or funny. Like he's just sort of there, whereas everything that's charming and funny is happening around him.
I think his greatest acting moment in this is when he pops up and he's like, gotcha, when he like fake puts his hand in and he's like, oh, I got bit.
Tricked you, like, Baron.
Steals his sword and like bounces out of there.
Yeah.
And then falls directly into quicksand or whatever, like deep mud.
It's just super deep mud. Yeah. He went from one shitty situation to another shitty situation almost instantly.
And I was like, oh, he gets rescued by some weird creature. But no, he just pulls himself out by a regular branch and then gets like sucked into the ground by some crazy fucking Sarlacc style monster.
Well, it's like, so, you watch something like The Princess Bride, right? And like The Princess Bride has sort of a similar situation where Wesley is like taking the princess through this forest and he's giving expository dialogue about the forest, and it's very funny because he's like nonchalantly like slapping vines and being like, this is the forest of no return, and like, oh, those are the flaming fart holes, and there's giant rats in here, so you're going to be worried about those. And he's like giving you things to worry about, and then comedically he's attacked by one. Whereas in this, it's like, I can't really tell what I'm supposed to be feeling. It's just sort of like excitement for the sake of excitement, and it's not doing much for me.
Yeah, like the fart pits in Labyrinth.
Yeah, or the big flaming fart swamp in The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
But it's like, it would be fun if there was a character there who, like, if they maybe extended a little bit the riffraff sequence where he was with him and leading him, and like this was happening before that, like you could have some fun there. But it just seems like event after event kind of thing, where it's like, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Zarkov overcomes Ming's brainwashing. Meanwhile, Flash disguises himself to infiltrate Ming's palace and rescues Dale. They both escape to Sky City. Then we get like the trial by combat sequence, which is pretty hardcore. They fight with whips on a spiked floor, like turntable that's like moving all over the place, and different spikes are coming out.
Blessed is like, give me the controls, and they like give him like a little remote control, and he's just like blip, 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 pressing buttons on it, and it's like causing it to move. It's so funny because he's a psychopath. Like his character seems like he's noble, but he seems like he's also like loves watching people die. Like it's one of his favorite things to have happen on a daily basis. I don't know if it happens on a daily basis, but he definitely is having a great time watching these two fight to the death.
And we also get a ticking clock during this, where somebody's like, "We only have 14 hours left until Earth is destroyed."
Yeah. We got that timer the whole way through the movie.
Yeah, Dale yells that during the fight.
Yeah,
and then like he's trying to reason with James Bond during this fight as well, being like, "If you kill me, promise me that you'll team up with the Hawk people and fight Ming together." And James Bond is like, "What the fuck? Can you just fight me? You're making this fight weird. I don't like it." And then he like, so I mean, this fight is, again, we talked about it a little bit, but those spikes are real, and like if you were to fall on one, you would injure yourself pretty badly if you fell on it hard enough.
Maybe die.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where kind of like when I was editing the video for the start of this month, I was scrubbing through that scene a lot because I was looking for sort of like actiony moments in each of these movies, which is a little bit difficult to find compelling action moments of movies of this era. They're not as dynamic to edit as maybe movies that are more modern. So I scrubbed through this scene quite a bit, and like I could not find a single frame where they're like rubberized, where like, are any of these spikes fake? Did they just put like these, like they could be plastic, they could be whatever, but like
Cardboard maybe.
Yeah, they're
Some of them are
definitely rigid is what I'll say. Yeah. Well, I mean, the one that he's hanging off of is probably reinforced, but all the other ones as well are just like, they're not moving at all. Even when they're coming up and going down, like usually if something is flimsy, it'll wiggle a little bit, which I guess they didn't want to take away from the production value of this Sky City sequence. But
where apparently it's 150 kilometers down or whatever, 15 kilometers down.
I had to like
Just
look
similar.
up. I had to look up if anyone got injured during this fight sequence. But it did. The one interesting thing is that it did take them 3 weeks to fight this fight scene, just to shoot this fight scene. Sorry, and it ended up being less than 3 minutes of the movie. But apparently, there's a lot more whip fighting that happened.
The cutting room floor has a
the Zack Snyder cut of the Flash Gordon spike pedestal pit sequence.
The movie's the same length, but it is actually 6 hours long, and 5 hours of it is just them fighting on this.
Yeah.
It's shot in real time. They have it's the best choreography fight probably in the whole movie, I would say, because a lot of the like the Sam James, or what's the main Sam Jones, is terrible at acting and also fight choreography. Except for, that's why I thought he was a real football player, because of that sequence where he's throwing the football, like that looked real, and he's like charging people.
I mean, let's be real, he probably played football at some point in his life.
Yeah, he's a big dude, right? Fucking division 1 fucking quarterback in real life, probably.
But I mean, I think that the fight sequence overall is, it's compelling, but to be honest, I was more concerned for the actors involved than I was for the characters that were fighting it, But I do think that Brian Blessed is probably the funniest he is in the entire movie is in this sequence where he's just like yelling like, to the death! Like,
to the death!
Give me the control! And just like he is cackling with laughter the entirety of the fight up until the part where like he's like, give me your hand. And he's like, what the fuck is this? You can't. Yeah. No, you have to kill him.
No, you've won. Let him die. Let him go. And that's what happens. They fight over to like the edge. He kicks him off and he holds onto the spike and he shows his heroism by pulling him back up. And then they have that fucking handshake moment. The Arnold Schwarzenegger, and
it's so slow too. Which I couldn't tell if it was. I was like, we all know they're gonna shake hands, but like Timothy Dalton really took his time to take that hand and shake it.
It's like Macho Man and Hulk Hogan forming the Mega Powers, looking at the crowd and like holding their own. Yeah,
and then he has like a good line, like there's something brighter than Ming's rule or something. He says something like uplifting to everybody. But they don't have enough time to let it steep and make a true decision. And Brian Blessed's character realizes that they need to escape because Ming has arrived, or Ming's what would you call it? Like a proxy, I guess. Clytus arrives with his Dr. Doom mask, and he shows up and he basically lists off all their crimes. He's like, you're all going to be executed for this.
Like, okay. So I was going to ask you, Ming is Palpatine and Clytus is Darth Maul?
Ming?
Yeah, if we were gonna
Ming's the fucking Palpatine.
No, I'm saying if we're gonna relate this to Star Wars.
I just did.
Yeah.
Ming's the Palpatine.
Ming's Palpatine.
He's not the Darth.
Yeah, he would be Darth Vader. Clytus would be Vader. Yeah.
But Darth Vader doesn't die till.
No, I would say that like he's not as cool as
Darth Maul dies in the first movie. that he's
so
in.
yeah, he would be a Maul, I guess. He's more of like a Tarkin, like Tarkin from A New Hope, who's like, "You may fire when ready." Like he's more like that kind of guy. But he is like a Vader and a Tarkin mixed, I would say.
Yeah, okay. It just his look is so striking. He's got, like you said, he's got that.
I like the way he looks.
Look. I like the skull masks,
and I like that the jaw moves like a Muppet kind of when he's talking.
Yeah.
You can see his teeth and shit. Like I like that, and I think he's got a really good voice. Like everything about him is sort of like powerful, and there is almost a sense that he realizes he's untouchable, but he also feels like there's like a little bit of resentment for Ming, where you're like, I could see this guy maybe helping them and betraying Ming as well, and like taking over. I think it's meant to be his hand at the end when the ring is being taken, even though his eyeballs and tongue like get squeezed out of his helmet like a Play-Doh.
What a great effect that was.
Yeah.
What a horror moment.
That's your Indiana Jones heart removal scene right there. Yeah.
Or the face
should have made it PG-13. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote.
They basically he shows up and he runs his mouth a little too hard about how he's like, you can't touch me. I'm the fucking proxy of the Empire. And then they throw him onto the spikes and he just dies.
Yeah.
Like, oh god.
I wrote his face oozes out.
Yeah. Apparently that actor on set, because he knew how malleable the entire process of the filmmaking was, he was trying to convince the writers and directors on set to like, maybe we don't kill Clytus. Maybe Clytus has more. And they're like, no, you're dead.
No, you're toast. Maybe Clytus is the hand that comes in at the very, very end.
I feel like that was their like, maybe if this does well, Clytus will come back. We'll have some plans for Clytus to return.
Yeah, so
we signed everyone on
back. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Moment.
Well, we all know that he would come back as a clone, and it would be like,
exactly.
It was just a clone of me, or something.
A weird clone factory underneath a giant pyramid.
I made a clone out of Play-Doh. That's why his eyes and tongue squeezed out of his helmet when he died. It wasn't even like he was being squeezed to death. He just got stabbed and everything fell out.
That's just how he dies.
That's how clones die.
Not his race. Yeah.
Clones die. We've all seen clones die.
It's true. At Sky City, Flash persuades Voltan to join forces against Ming. Flash's inspirational speech and his bravery during a dangerous would-beast ritual with Baron win him allies. Yeah, so that's that segment.
Well, no, because this is when Ming sends down like all the everybody flies off, all the vultures fly off, and then Ming is like, no, send down a shuttle to retrieve the girl and the prince, but leave Gordon there. And then he goes down and he has like a heart-to-heart, a one-on-one with Gordon, and he's like,
oh yes, that's right.
To do the join me and together we can destroy the Empire.
But he says this. He says something very specific.
Quite operational.
Yeah. When your friends arrive.
He says something very specific though. He says, I'm still going to destroy Earth and reduce it to rubble, but that'll be your domain, and you go there and you get Earth. You can have all the slaves you want back on fucking raised Earth. And Flash is like, no.
Well, he says like, so you'll spare Earth, and he says, yes and no. I'm basically going to rock it to its fucking core, and then you.
Did you not hear when I said I'm bored?
Yeah, I'm so
13 days ago.
Yeah. He also calls him a hero. He's like, you're a hero. Can't you see that? You have to go down there. And what better to lead a planet than a hero? Like, I'll fuck your planet up, and then you go down there and you rule there. Like, that's what'll happen. And then, I'll fuck your girlfriend, and then I'll send down my spawn to replace you when you get too old.
Yeah, perfect. What a great plan. Ming is kind of a great villain. He's like racist looking. He's like
also,
a white
like,
guy. And
Max von Sydow, like, he's such a good actor. So it's like, he's not, awesome. And he's not like, he is like Brian Blessed, like, knows what he's in. Like, he's like, I'm just going to play a villain who loves being fucking evil. Like, even when his daughter is being tortured, it's like, shall we stop the torture, sir? And he's like, no. Like, while he's eating like a little crystal goblet full of olives or some shit. What is
Space olive.
Yeah.
Space olives.
Yeah.
I assume. They probably didn't get them from Earth.
No, he was eating boar worms. He's like, you can eat them,
Not
Just
the
don't let-
bullworms.
Just don't let them get near your ears or butthole.
Or the
Not
boar.
boreworms.
Man, Max.
I was
wants
expecting to see boreworms after the meme. I was like, are we going to see boreworms? You never see boreworms. It's not
Didn't we
as
see
big.
one?
as-
I thought we saw-
No,
it's probably in and out of
she
sleep.
pulls out a little box.
Called
Like,
not the boreworms line.
she pulls out a little box, like, you know, the other lady, I can't remember her name, but like the evil woman who's like in charge of all the bald guys with the goggles on. She pulls out,
the general. The general.
yeah. When Clytus is like, bring the boreworms, she brings over a little box, which you can only assume contained boreworms, but you never get to see her open the box and see, like, I don't know, like the Wrath of Khan monsters. You know, the little things they put in people's brains.
Yeah,
in the Wrath
the
of Khan?
ear wig.
The earwig thing, yeah.
Oh yeah, my next moment that I want to talk about was what we just talked about, which is, you know, Ming's forces attack Sky City, forcing the Hawkmen to flee. Flash stays behind to cover their escape and is captured. Ming offers him the kingdom if he betrays Earth. Flash refuses. I wanted to make a note here that when the Hawkmen are flying directly at the camera, they look like they're on a bullshit soundstage. But
The version that I watch, you can see the strings. Like, you can see like,
but I will say the Hawkmen in the background that are flying away in mass,
they look all right.
I
yeah.
thought looked pretty good. I thought it looked pretty cool for the era, and I think even by today's standards would look fine. Because it's an interesting effect that sort of just kind of meshes into the background. That you don't really have to. It's probably just animated. Even when it says like "Thank you, Flash" at the end, like I was kind of like okay with that too.
Oh, I was okay with it because I mean that's not the most bonkers part of the movie.
Also,
but-
yeah.
Sure.
Also, like they've been filling that space with stuff throughout the movie, like the background sky, like that's kind of like a gag throughout the. Remember when they're getting married and it's like everyone will be married,
Yeah,
or will be punished by death.
punishable by death.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like that stuff is very funny. So yeah, like them making a sky sign, being like, all right, like I guess that's part of their military training is they have to be able to spell out words in the sky to like
yeah, they got to be stunt flyers.
yeah, to warn people what's going on.
on their fly cycles or
Sidebar: I know you guys don't have kids, so this might mean nothing to you guys. Brian Blessed, also the voice of Grampy Rabbit and Peppa Pig.
Oh, is he still alive? I thought
He's
he was
still alive. He was born in 1936.
Imagine they made a Lego sequel to this, and it's like it starts and it's Brian Blessed narrating. He's like, "Flash Gordon, the greatest warrior I ever knew."
Where'd that go? He was in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but he was the narrator in a bunch of shit. Actually, reading through, he has a great fucking voice. Should
He does,
narrate. Whatever Morgan Freeman isn't narrating, it should be Brian.
Brian Blessed, yeah. I'd watch a Lego sequel, like a real hard, like the
We
production.
right into it. Speaking of Lego sequels, we watched the new Beetlejuice last night, and it was
Oh.
fucking great.
Was it good?
say
Yeah,
really
you know what?
fucking
Everybody that I whose opinion that I respect at least has told me it's good. So I'm glad to hear you.
because
say
I was literally going to say, "Hey, Steve, you want to go see Beetlejuice tomorrow night?"
Do it.
Beetle. I have to play D&D tomorrow night, but I do want to see it.
I want to see it sooner than later. I also want to see the Joker, even though I hear it's boring. But anyway,
I don't want to see the Joker.
I know you don't care about Todd Phillips' Joker Part 2. I don't care about the first movie, but I like Lady Gaga. Anyway, Act 3, the battle for Mongo. Final assault plan, the rebel takes shape. Flash escapes and teams up with Baron and the Hawkman. They devise a plan to attack Ming's wedding to Dale, which would solidify his rule for some reason. It's never really clear to me why he needs this Earthling woman to really just.
I don't
hit
think
it
he
home.
needs. I think he just wants. I think
Yeah,
that's the difference. Is like he says he needs, but he doesn't. He just wants.
Plot device. It's called a
Also,
shitty plot device.
How about the great moment where Aura busts into Dale's fucking harem room and they just start having like the worst cat fight you've ever seen? Like a cat fight that the director was
like
like,
a sorority girl, like pillow
Yeah.
fight. Like, yeah, it was terrible.
like,
It
how
was
about
like,
you
well,
guys?
we got some girls, so the girls got to fight. If all the boys are fighting, we got to have a girl fight too.
But how about you guys don't have a choreographed like fist fight? What if you
No,
guys
just
just
grab
like
some
pull each
gloves.
other's hair and throw each other around on a
That's
plush
the weirdest
bed
part
while
is
you're-
because like earlier she is kind of taking on those like pig guards and stuff pretty well. Like she's doing a good job. She's hiding, she's stealthing around people like it's a Ubisoft stealth based mission in Splinter Cell or something, and she's going around a corner and like being like over here, like smoking a guy. But then when it comes down to one-on-one combat, she's just like, oh, oy.
And then the slaves love it. And all the slaves for some reason look the same. They like cast these women that all kind of like look the same, which I thought
Ming
was
has a
interesting.
type. That's like a
Yeah.
that's his T.
Yeah.
Ming has a thing, is what I'll say.
Ming's thing.
Ming's thing.
But you know, Aura's trying to turn over a new leaf. And the queen.
I mean, she
Earth
was
Girl.
horribly betrayed by her father and
That's right.
slightest. But also she was also betraying them. So I guess, you know, but I mean, Ming, you raised a daughter to be ruthless. She fell in love with somebody. What do you expect, Ming?
Yeah,
What do you
there's
expect?
Game of Thrones complexities going on here. All sorts
Yeah.
of betrayals and double crossing.
All this movie needed was one walk through a garden to really get that Game of Thrones flavor.
Oh,
I
right.
assume I didn't really watch the show.
I mean, that's kind of what the talk with Flash Gordon and Ming is.
That
that
yeah,
is a
that's a
walk
good
through
point.
a garden scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
He like literally walks up to the hole and he has his hands clasped behind his back. He's like, I'd hate to see you be vaporized, and like kicks a cup into like space or whatever. And you're
Into
like, oh.
nothing.
Yeah.
I think it's a hand. I think it's one of those like
Is it one of
teleportation
those hand
hands.
things?
Oh, speaking of hand, don't they have the hand guns?
Mhm.
Guns
Well,
that shoot hands.
Yeah.
I didn't.
They
dream
also
that.
When you're in like restraints, it's like little hands that grab you.
Yeah.
As well.
when Aura is getting tortured
They're like hands,
right
they're holding
before
her.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're holding her down.
You mean the
they're like,
scene? Not the boar worms.
Not the
boar
boar
worms.
Not the bullworms.
Not the boar worms. Oh, not
No.
You must watch that.
Okay, I'm gonna watch it
Me,
tonight.
not the boar worms.
It's so much funnier. Like it's like immediately 10 times funnier to me.
I sent that meme to Jason probably 60 times over the last 2 weeks.
But like for the first time 2 weeks ago, and I was like, ha ha ha, ha. I love Katya's fucking. I love Katya. I love these drag queens. They're so funny. And I was like, why is he?
I was
why-
preparing his brain for this episode. Yeah.
to be bored. B-O-R-E-D.
It was
Nope, that's
boring
still
you.
the same word. I just didn't. I was like, Steve rarely gloms on to the same thing being said over and over, but here we are.
I don't do it ever. It's the first
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
I understand that.
Not the boar worms.
Not the boar worms. The way they shoot the mini for the big ship reminds me of the low budget Star Wars. Oh, reminds me of low budget Star Wars. So during this next bit, we get a giant space battle. Let's see if that's where we're at here. The Hawkmen launch a full-scale attack on Ming's palace. Flash commandeers a rocket cycle and leads the charge, dodging enemy defenses. And this is just a whole segment out in space with them flying towards the palace. The palace has like a weird. I saw it as it being like a force field, but I guess it was them shooting things out.
No, it's
From-
a force field.
It
It's
is
a
a force
it's a
field?
lightning force field. Yeah.
Right.
There's a whole sequence where James Bond has to shut down the lightning
Yes.
shield.
Yeah, a lightning pyramid, whatever. Cone.
Yeah, it's like these spinning lightning bolts that are going around it and protecting it from anything getting inside. But it's Ming has set that up so that nobody can interrupt his wedding. He's like, we have to make sure the lightning shields are up. Someone's going to try and stop my wedding.
It's almost Disney. It's like a very Disney
It's
feeling.
great. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
it's great.
simple.
And then we
everything
get
is
like a 20-minute end battle.
yeah.
Yeah, just a
And it's
segment
kind
of
of pretty good. Like it's not
Yeah.
like, you know, you go into movies like this and you're like, it's very old, it's so dated, but am I gonna be charmed by it? And I was pretty
I was
charmed by
charmed by
most of it. Yeah.
And then I'm gonna bring up the Queen soundtrack again because
Yes.
this is like the
dun, 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 dun.
it hits its peak at this end battle. Like it's sure it's amazing at the beginning and
Flash!
it shows up, but like Brian May with his fucking guitar and his shredding really comes like into full effect in this end battle. Like he
And
really
this is also where the score is meeting with the Flash theme as well, where it's like not only is it the guitars from Queen from the beginning sort of anthem, it's also like the entire orchestra is there as well, being like, we're here to support you as well.
Oh man, it's so good. You can't tell where the orchestra ends and Queen begins at some point.
They also did a really cool thing where we do get the shot of the Star Destroyer style ship from underneath, which is an iconic shot from Star Wars as well. But there's also a scene I'd never seen before where a miniature like pokes its front out from some clouds, which I thought looked really cool. If you hide everything around these miniatures, it looks awesome. It's just when it's just like a miniature on a green screen, that's when you're like, are we watching
prepare for Barbarella, Jason?
Yeah, oh god.
But yeah, I agree. That must be they must have shot at a very high frame rate and slowed it down, because that is clearly just sort of like thick gaseous mist that they've pulled a miniature through, but it looks good because everything's moving very slowly. And I agree with you.
Yeah, I wrote a note to what Craig was saying. A big low budget fight between the Fly Guys while Queen plays pretty good.
Yeah. But that I
love the winged weirdos in my notes at one point as well.
Flying guys, dive! So good. Wave 1, dive!
I was struggling to finish the video for this month earlier this morning, and I really wanted that to be how it ends, is just Brian Blessed yelling "Die!" like going down, and they all. But I couldn't get it to work.
Oh, that's too bad. And then the third wave, where like the battle had pretty much been resolved, but he was like, fuck it, everyone dive! One last dive where everyone just like went for it.
And this is also like we've learned a little bit about his character throughout the movie. We understand that he loves combat. When we first meet him, he's trying to brain Baron immediately, being like, "You traitor! Like, I'll kill you!" And like he loves violence, but he's never really shown any sort of compassion for anyone other than his daughter that you see for like a second. But now that he knows that Flash Gordon is willing to help him and like everybody's kind of working together, he has a different side, like he's not the cackling psychopath who wants to see
teamwork. And they like, despite having weekends and I guess maybe football, perhaps they don't know what the word teamwork is. Like Flash brings up teamwork at some point, and everyone's like, "What?
What is this concept
together,
Gordon? What are you talking about?"
Well, it's when we work together.
So he taught them what a team is.
Yeah, but like clearly everybody knows what teamwork is in terms of their individual,
their own
factions.
group. Yeah,
it's like when two factions work together.
when two factions love each other, very much.
Impossible.
Third faction is created by the marriage of those two factions.
They're gonna have a weird arboreal man with wings.
I'll take it.
They'll start interbreeding. There's not a lot of women in this galaxy, though. I gotta say, or in this
just like Star
area
Wars
of the galaxy. Yeah, everybody's just chomping at
Ming
the bit.
has taken them all for himself. He's like, I have all the women.
That's actually a good point. I just, as you were saying, I was like, oh yeah, Ming has all the women.
Yeah.
So I do really enjoy the fact that the Hawkmen just fight a ship and infiltrate it and then overtake it.
Well, I mean, paired with the Queen music, like the shot of all the Ming soldiers like preparing, like it almost has like a Zeppelin feel to it. Like it feels like a blimp more than a ship. And they're moving around and going out onto this sort of like gangplanks and side railings and stuff and fighting. And then all these angel guys are just floating down and shooting as well. But yeah, paired with the music, it's exciting. Even though the cinematography is not blowing my mind, just the music paired with what little action you're getting is like, it's good, man. It reminds me of Star Wars, because like Star Wars also has incredible music, and it does a lot of the heavy work for especially A New Hope, where they hadn't figured out their legs and they don't really understand what they're doing yet. this movie has the same kind of vibe going there, where you're like, yeah, you can just have people hanging off a railing shooting laser guns at each other. As long as you've got some squibs and sparks and some good music, it's gonna work.
Sweet guitar shredding.
It's just a million times campier than Star Wars. You know, it just has all.
But
the
I mean, that was
makings
their
of
goal, right? That
big
was
colorful mess.
Yeah, they were making a comic book movie, and I'm gonna bring us right back to the beginning. I appreciate that the intro actually like had a whole bunch of like comic book pages that they were just showing, like a pre-Marvel thing. They were not holding back from being like, this is a fucking comic book movie. You get Tim Burton's Batman 9 years later, which like didn't lean into the comic bookness of all
Right,
at all.
yeah.
It made it its own thing. Flash Gordon was like, let's make this as comic book as possible, and I respect that's what they attempted to do.
Was this movie 40 years ahead of its time in that respect?
No.
Then
No,
it was exactly of its time.
yes.
I think they could do something with this now, though, and I know that they have been trying for years and years. I think Taika Waititi has I think he has the rights to an animated Flash Gordon. Like he's trying to get an animated one. made.
No, I want to see it with practical effects.
Me
live
too,
action
yeah.
Again, like for
And
sure.
I mean, if
Now,
Brian
who would be the
Blessed,
soundtrack? Let's wipe Queen out of the equation because they don't exist anymore.
yeah,
Kind of.
would
Who
have to
would we have
be-
do the soundtrack? Not Trent Reznor. 'Cause
Slayer.
he's going to be too busy doing Tron. Ding,
Yeah.
ding,
Let's
ding,
get
ding,
Slayer.
ding,
Let's
ding,
get the
ding,
remaining members of Slayer. Let's make a Flash Gordon that's just like the
Slayer. Who's
hardest.
the band who did fucking Do You Believe in a Thing Called Love?
Oh yeah,
Do You Believe in a
yeah,
Thing Called Love?
yeah.
Like, they can
yeah.
shred.
That would be really good because they have a Queen
uh,
vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
do it.
man, because the guy, the lead singer of that, has been back on like TikTok talking about music. So he's like he's around.
Yeah, he's in the Pantheon.
The thing about today's sort of like just the way that music and film collaborate with each other, it's not the same anymore, right? Like I think Tron doing Daft Punk and then now doing 9 Inch Nails is like, it is a hearkening back to this, right? Like
Yeah,
this is what it was. It's like a marquee idea of the movie is we've got Queen and we've got this movie, and that's those two things are married. And that was the same thing with Tron. I wasn't really that excited to see the new Tron movie, but when I had heard that Daft Punk was doing the soundtrack,
Thanks, Tim.
I got Darkness. I got a little bit more excited, and I, like it's been years.
I figured it out.
It's been
Yeah,
years
Jason
since
got
that.
I got it. I figured it out. Flash Gordon with the soundtrack by Imagine Dragons.
This was not the only movie that Queen did the full soundtrack to. Although maybe
No, somebody
unofficially,
said
they also
earlier-
did Metropolis.
Yeah, and somebody said another one earlier in the chat. It was
It's up there, but
fuck, I had it up there. I'm scrolling. Not that many people.
Scrolling. What? Toto did the Queen soundtrack.
Highlander.
Highlander. Yeah, I mean that almost makes me want to watch the Highlander again, except like truth be told, at this point, I didn't really care for Highlander. I like all the tropes that have come out of it. There can be only one. Like, it's an awesome idea. Watching the movie was a slog for me.
Christopher
Yeah.
Lambert, though.
I'm not a big Christopher Lambert fan. Sean Connery, yes.
Love Sean Connery, hate Raiden.
I mean, I hate Sean Connery as a person. He's a fucking dick, but as an actor, he's enjoyable to watch.
I agree.
You know what's funny? This was almost September. I know that's a different person, but
Yeah.
no, it's not, because it was
No,
September, as in it was going to be.
we were going to do a month called
January.
September. and
September.
It was going to be all Sean Connery movies, and we pronounced it September.
Oh yeah, so your Zardoz in there. You still got
Zardoz was part of that equation.
I can't believe I'm going to watch Zardoz again within the next 3 weeks. It's a tough watch because it's so bananas.
It is
This
hard.
movie is tame. This movie is like mainstream, easy to watch compared to
Zardoz is like reading a textbook. Wow.
it is textbook of the most bananas fantasy film you could.
Yeah.
It's good luck, guys.
It's like Clockwork Orange, but less.
Like the fantasy version instead of like the sci-fi ultra violence version.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
So they realize it isn't it isn't there. Oh, actually, I wanted to bring up this scene that was actually pure comedy for me, where Baron and Dale are like tied up like this, and Aura comes in to save them, and it just says "Long live Flash" on the wall. Like already,
Yeah,
people
it's
are,
like who wrote that
rebelling
there and how because they're
escaping.
tied up.
Flash wrote that before he escaped. On his way out. He was
during
just
his
like,
escape.
Yeah. He writes he writes
here.
Originally it was supposed to say Flash rules, and then
with a Z.
The set director was like,
Yeah.
he decided to. He's like, no.
69 420.
Yeah.
But they realize, okay, so they've taken over the ship and they're trying to fly back into they're talking about crashing the ship already, but the general, that woman general, is like, they're not doing the flight pattern that we discussed. If they're flying that way, we have to shoot that ship down. So they start firing at the ship, and Flash is like, look, there's one of me, and I'm going to save millions of people. Also, dumb meathead moment, because there were 6 or 7 billion people on Earth in the 80s, right?
Probably about 5, I think, at that point. 5.5, yeah, somewhere.
How are we at
billions,
how are we at into the almost 9? What is happening on Earth?
Because we reproduce faster than we die, Jason.
It's exponential growth. Take a math class.
Okay. Well, the winged goggle men also, the weird goggle men also are a computer, is something that we realize here, because goggles are snatched off one of them, and it's like a computer, and they all just like malfunction.
I do like at that point that even James Bond is like, holy fuck, like he's like, I didn't realize that would kill you. Jesus.
Like, yeah, electricity being exposed to air destroys it.
I think more like your eyes being ripped out of your head can kill you, because like it looked like those were his eyes. Yeah.
Well, why do they all die?
Because they're all one guy. It's a computer that's controlled. Like that's
what I'm saying.
Oh, they're like the Borg.
Yeah, so it's like a computer of one person's mind is weak, but if you have 10 people who are the same computer, then it's going to be 10 times stronger.
They telegraph this weird moment for like the whole movie, because they show this computer table of men with
the way I looked at it is like those guys are central intelligence. Like they're like the supercomputer, like them all combined together. They are the intelligence of Ming's. I almost said dynasty. The Ming dynasty.
The Ming dynasty. Let's finish her out here, and Flash crashes into the wedding ceremony. Fucking crashes directly into Ming. Fighting through Ming's guards, Ming attempts to use his ring on Flash to kill Flash, but it fails. Ming is impaled by Flash's ship as he tries.
No.
Yeah,
that's not what happens.
Ship.
Ming kills himself.
Awesome.
That was the truncated version.
Am I misreading that? He's like, I will die.
Crash the ship in. It goes through Ming. We get that.
I'm talking about the ring. I know that he gets stabbed by the spike.
He says like with his last breath, he's like, he has control, and it's like, well, your power's faded, and he's like, my power's faded, and he just disappears.
No, he turns his ring around, and he's like, no one will kill me, and then he shoots himself with the ring. He kills himself because he's like, I don't want to
rather die than let his power be relinquished to someone else.
Yeah,
I absorbed all of the movie, except for I didn't recognize that that's what happened there. I thought he ran out of juice. I thought his, in horror movies where the hand comes up.
Yeah. What he said was he goes, the juice is loose, and then he dies.
Now you got the juice.
That's the line from Beetlejuice. Yeah. Spoilers. He says the juice is loose.
Oh shit!
Oh my god!
I just ruined the whole movie.
Because I don't need to see it anymore.
Yeah.
So, which I kind of really liked a lot, because I was like, he already got stabbed by a spaceship. Like a whole spaceship stabbed him through his heart.
And he's like, fuck you, I'm still not letting you win.
Yeah, you're not going to beat me up. You're not going to chop my head off. I'm going to zap myself. I'm going to use my Ming ring on myself. I'm going to disaster blast my own self.
That actually makes the question mark make more sense, because maybe it was a deception.
Maybe
he didn't roll for deception, so
he just turned himself
roll
invisible
for deception.
And ran away.
Yeah.
He took his ring off and like
he goes ting 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 ting.
Yeah. No, when he drops his Ming ring, it goes Ming 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 Ming.
With Ming defeated, his empire collapses. Mongo's inhabitants are liberated, and Flash is hailed as a hero. Princess Aura and Baron are set to rule Mongo as their new leaders, and we get that weird moment where Flash is like, "Well, we're stuck here. Are you prepared to stay here?" And Aura is like, or Dale is like, "Well, I'm a New York girl, and this place isn't fast enough for me."
Yeah.
What the fuck are you
Well, that's just a
talking
joke.
about?
It's a stupid.
I think her actual line was, "Whoa, I'm from New York over here, and I love pizza pie and taxi cab."
What's it coming to go over here?
And then she said, "Bada boom ba, I gotta go home to Earth,
Staten Island."
Yeah, and then Flash said, "Okie dokie,"
Okie dokie,
because he's so uncaring.
They signed all the actors on to multiple movies, by the way.
Mm-hmm. There is a slight disappointment inside of me that this doesn't have a sequel, and
right?
like especially
even if it's bad, I kind of want to see what happens next.
So like the end of A New Hope is one of the most exciting sequences of any movie in cinematic history, when the throne room opens and it's like dan da dan dan da da dan, and they're like walking, and Leia gives them, no one speaks at all, you know what's going on, she gives medals to everybody, they turn, and everybody is like cheering them, all the Rebel Alliance is cheering them, and you know the movie ends. This movie does an equivalent scene, which was getting me equally as jacked up as the end of A New Hope does, because it was the Queen, like as the door, like it cuts, they're in like this sequence, like ha 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 ha, and then it cuts to like dun 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 dun, and it's just a door that like opens with the like flash, and it's leading me up into that same sort of point of excitement, except then Timothy Dalton starts being like, "And you will be my friend, and you will be my friend, and together we will all be friends in the galaxy." And
because he learned what teamwork is.
I know, but like it wavers, and like there's a crescendo of that song where you do the Star Wars cut to credits, you know, and they didn't do it.
No, you're right. Yeah, the timing was not good.
Yeah.
The film,
but everything leading up to it, I was on the edge of my seat being like, this is sick. This is how they're going to end the movie, with the like the Flash, and it's going to just show Flash Gordon on the screen or something. Is that how it's going to happen? And then no, it's like everybody starts putting in their 2 fucking cents. Like, shut up. Just end the movie already. We get it. They're all happy now. Yeah.
The film ends with Ming's ring being picked up by a mysterious hand, implying that his story might not be over, leaving the audience with the classic line, "The end?"
Question mark.
Was this the first time they did that?
Actually, Craig, what you just said was like, it's going to show Flash going, yeah, they literally do that.
No,
like,
that's what I wasn't joking.
Oh, okay. I was like, and I thought like there was probably a moment where in editing, they're like, what if we just end it there? And they're like, no, we got to have, they probably did end it there. And they're like, pickups, we got to have a sequence later, which is why it's all Timothy Dalton. And it's the other guy's just like got his wig on. Like blocking his Flash Gordon face. But yeah, I don't know. I think that we could even probably just pitch a sequel to this really quickly right now if we tried to. Like, I don't think it would be hard.
There's not a lot of substance to the first one, so a sequel would be pretty easy.
Well, they talk about a planet called Phrygia all the time, right? In this movie, which I assume is
like
an
ice planet.
Well, because they have a crystal at the beginning called like the ice crystal or something. And like that's what they're fighting over. That's where you start the second movie, just like Star Wars, you know, a frozen planet.
Literally just, and Flash Gordon has to cut over a tin ton.
It's Brian Blessed's character, and he's got his wings, but he's wearing like a big like a feathery parka, like it's made of feathers, and he's like, yeah. And like something's been attacking Phrygia, and he's trying to figure out what it is.
And there's like the version of Ming that exists. He's all fucked up, like he's all like mutated.
He's frozen on Phrygia
man now.
Yeah, and when Brian Blessed's character gets there, he's got like a big mace or something, and he goes into a room, and it's Clytus, and he's like, Clytus, I thought you died back on the Spike Planet in the other movie. And Clytus is like,
but also the Hawkmen, even though the Hawkmen love to, you know, hawks live in trees. I just put that together, that they can't get along with each other. The Arborians and the Hawk people can't get along with each other. Even though birds love trees, they still hate each other for some unknown reason. and that's the reason why they can't get it together to fight the new the Empire that is striking back. And then it's perfect. So Flash has like super armor in this one. He gets in like a mech.
Well, does
suit.
Flash go back to Earth? Do they have to find Flash Gordon? Like maybe like because he killed Ming, like some kind of like imprint or something on the ring. Like the ring has to be very important. Like the Ming ring, like that was the
He takes the Ming ring back to Earth and he's just using it to like get a bag of chips and
to open his
it.
a tab energy drink. Like,
yeah, I think he would summon like Sauron and Fellowship of some sort.
Usually the Ming ring would corrupt like the One Ring from, but Flash Gordon is so fucking stupid that he can't be corrupted by the Ming ring. And he's like wearing it, but he's also got like Super Bowl rings on as well, like 3 Super Bowl rings and the Ming ring.
He uses the Ming ring to win a Super Bowl in world, and then this is just like the Super Bowl party, and he has to get it. So there'd be a bunch of like football celebrities now because this movie apparently is big, you know. So there's a bunch like,
and it would
Troy
be
Aikman is there, and
so like the character
Randy Refrigerator Jackson.
The character who played Dale would ask for more money, and the studio would just fire her, so she would be recast. With new actor, or she would be a new character completely, like all the Batman movies in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would like
if we make a sequel today, who are we casting as Flash?
Oh, if we're doing a Legacy sequel, like one that's like now. Yeah. I mean, Brian Blessed is still playing his same character. He's going to be a withered old.
Yeah, he's just
Henry Cavill. I want Henry Cavill as my Flash.
Well, so shouldn't Flash be an old man too then? Shouldn't he be like if it's but maybe
time moves differently in space?
That's what I was about to say. Maybe time moves differently for the people of the Flash Gordon universe, so we can cast younger if we want to. Or, you know, that's how we should do it.
It's the fucking Rock in a blonde wig.
It's Josh Hutcherson.
Yeah, Josh Hutcherson's been back recently. We pop a blonde wig on him and make him. No, do you know who it is? I'm sorry to say this, but it's Chris Pratt.
No,
I don't want it. I'm saying that's what they do.
I think we're all done with that guy.
Yeah, I agree. It's Jack Black.
But we do need like a new kind of Chris Pratt type person to be that.
Oh, it's Powell. It's that douche fuck from Twisters.
Or we go crazy Dave Franco.
Okay.
I'll take a Dave Franco.
Or Casey Affleck.
Isn't he like a pervert or something?
Yeah, he's like a rapist or something.
No, Casey Affleck I think is fine. I think you're thinking of James Franco.
No, Casey Affleck. I mean, yes, James Franco sucks. Not as much as Casey Affleck does, though.
I specifically chose Dave Franco because he's not problematic, and non-Afflecks because
I thought Casey Affleck was just becoming a better actor. But
no, he's a shitty rapist.
Allegedly a rapist.
All right, let's just go with Tom Hanks. He's a retired football player.
Yeah.
And the time passed normally.
All right. Here's what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about the Home Alone of it all.
What?
If you had to pick one, what do you think the Home Alone is? The Home Alone of it all. Can someone please tell me when the Home Alone? I really gotta know. When is the Home Alone of it all? What is the Home Alone of it all? Now that's the Home Alone of it all.
In case you forgot, Craig, the Home Alone of it all is the idea that everybody goes to see the movie Home Alone to see the part where Kevin McAllister slaps down the blueprint. I think that ultimately in season 3, I'd like to just say that like this is your favorite part of the movie, but it is the sort of idea that the trailer presents this vision of a movie, or it's like the third act of the movie sometimes. But it is sort of like the part of the movie you came here to see and the draw of the movie. So what's your Home Alone of it all for Flash, Craig?
Queen.
You are the guest. Just Queen?
Queen is what drew me into it. If it wasn't for the fucking soundtrack, I would have given less shits about watching this movie. I would have liked it less watching it. Like Queen is where I was like, fucking, I'm gonna finally get to put this music to the movie, and I guarantee, we can look it up. I guarantee the trailers featured the Queen music start to finish.
Like,
That's
had
what's
to
drawing
have.
people in. And then I guess what I'm wondering is like, how did like fans of the comic strip appreciate this movie? Like, was this a good Flash Gordon representation when you look at the comic strips? Like,
If you were
maybe
born
we're
in the
just the fact that
30s, you're
Flash
like
Gordon is
50 when
buying
this
those
movie
comics.
comes out, right?
They're like old men being like, this isn't the Flash that I know.
Not my
Flash
Flash.
Gordon played polo back in the day.
Yeah.
Which is true. He
Does
started
anyone
out as a polo
check
player.
this out? I doodled Flash fucking a giant cube of gel. I'm gonna turn it into a movie.
My
called
Flash did
Story.
anal.
My Flash does anal. All right. That's fair.
No,
How about
Queen.
you?
Queen is my answer. I think Queen is the Home Alone.
I
of
think
it
that's
all that
probably
people are coming to see.
I mean, yeah. Every time Queen sparks, where you're like aware, you're because there's lots of moments in this movie where you're not kind of like fully focusing on the music, but it's always there in some capacity. But as soon as it starts to really kind of like hit you, you're like, oh yeah, I like this movie. Why do I like this so much? Oh, it's the music. For me, I think the Home Alone of it all is as soon as the scientist pulled that gun out, I was like, I'm in. I'm good with this. Like what this one moment, him just haphazardly pulling a gun out and having it there already and being like, I was right. Like he just carries that gun around at all times just in case he was right. I like that. I think it's extremely funny, and it kind of like changed my brain chemistry on how I should be watching this movie going forward. Like it just kind of flipped everything, and it made the rest of the movie much more enjoyable because I knew what I should be looking for in terms of like what this movie is. So yeah, that's my Home Alone wall. Very early on, rare, but it's there.
I'm with you on that. Mine is just like shortly after that, like literally when they're floating across those epic like space skylines, I guess. And also there's this weird moment where they're like all passing out, but Flash and Dale sort of like cozy up and they like almost kiss as they're passing out. Like that sort of starts the movie for me. And that's very early. Like that's not even, I don't even think the first act is like technically over when they're flying off into space.
Rare that we all give an answer that's like right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, really
Horror
lost it.
movies are usually the ones where that happens.
Yeah.
Is Flash Gordon a horror movie?
No, but Flash Gordon is.
But Flash Gordon is definitely a horror movie.
Oh, I think you said porno movie.
The porn alone of it all is Flash Gordon. Great. Well, we're all pretty unanimous with that. The music and the start of the movie. This movie gets going immediately. But I think before we get there, do you guys have any theories? Any reason to use the theory sting? Any brain cannons?
I mean, I did a bunch of theories throughout. I probably should have been stinging it the whole time, but
it's true. We just hit it. Just hit it. Fuck it. I think I was talking about the end. Talking about what we would do for a sequel.
I think that them offering Ming eggs is supposed to be them like offering their fertility to Ming for their planet.
Okay.
So that was my. And then Craig, you're like, you're looking too far in it. They're just Fabergé.
Yeah. I don't think I had no theories about this movie. I don't think it was deep at all.
It's very what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
It's brain. It's like headcanon stuff though.
But sometimes you like to create things that are more complicated. Just
I
to
didn't with the movie. Yeah, like I usually do, but with this one, I was like, no, it's all just visuals and music for me.
Yeah, it's like not really required almost.
Yeah.
It's just that literally like this is a comic book movie 40 years before they started doing them properly. It's based off like you say that in the 1930s it was like a newspaper comic strip.
Yeah, it's still fucking going. This comic strip's been going for 90 years.
Wow.
Obviously not the same guy writing it. Anyway.
Yeah,
That's insane though.
It's Ming the Merciless himself. He's still alive. Like pulls himself out of his ring every once in a while to write a couple of issues.
Well, I guess with that we have to play the MPAA rating game.
It's time to play Guess the MPAA.
I mean, I've looked at it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kent Borworm, and we're here tonight to play the greatest game show that exists in all of space and time. It is, of course, the MPAA rating game. Craig, I believe you played this before, but if you haven't, my co-host Stephen Borworm is going to tell you all about the rules. So I turned down the volume a little bit.
My name is Stephen Borworm, contender of volume. Oh, there we go. What we need to do is find a 3-digit number between 999 and 000. This, of course, are the last 3 digits in the MPAA rating. Not the rating itself, but the number that it was rated in. 5-digit number. Jason's going to give us the first 2 numbers. We need to guess the last 3. Number between 000 and 999.
That's right, Stephen. And of course, the MPAA certificate number is a number that's given to each and every movie because of the fact that they're able to give these movies ratings. And that has nothing to do with what we're doing here. As you said, it's just a number. You just have to guess a number between 000 and 999. I'm going to tell you if it's higher or lower. And
I don't know if you made it clear, Jason. This number has nothing to do with anything. We just need to guess the last 3 numbers.
It's like a
999.
The first 2 numbers this week are 26.
389.
Lower, Steve.
Ooh. 100.
Lower, Craig.
Oh, 69. 069.
Lower, Steve.
20.
Sorry?
20. 0 20.
Higher, Craig. Your final guess.
42.
Steve, your final guess is lower than that.
31.
Oh, look at that face. Is that number Wang?
What are you looking for?
The fart sound.
The fart sound is right.
Yeah. There you go. Nope, that was you guys circled the drain this week, and the number this week is, of course, 26032.
Oh, one off. That's so close. That's like as close as you can get.
That's pretty much as close as you can get.
The MPAA, everyone. The MPAA. Wow.
Well, that's our show tonight. We're gonna hit our final thoughts, and then we're gonna GT the F out of here.
It's time for our final thoughts.
Yep.
Craig,
I'm gonna say watch it, but turn the volume way the fuck up. Don't watch it while your kids are in bed and you have to have it nice and quiet. Make sure it's blasting through the stereo and you can get that full fidelity of the Queen soundtrack, and it's gonna blow your mind.
and if you had to give it a rating, if you wanted to give it a rating,
Like out of 10, I would call
4
it
out of 5, whatever you want.
4 out of 5. I'm gonna go out of 10. I'm gonna call it like a 6 out of 10.
And if you wanted to give it a nonsense rating, I'd allow that too.
Oh, I would give it 5 flashes out of 69.
Whoa.
I don't know.
Like flashes of light or like flashes of your wiener?
Yes.
Yes. So my final thoughts. Dun, 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 dun. I was kind of. Oh. All right.
You're welcome.
I always kind of fuck up again here.
Steve, your final thoughts.
My final thoughts are that I was kind of apprehensive going into this, as I'm going to be, I think, for the entirety of this month, because these movies are old, but they're well liked. Most of them are, at least, and I think this one is maybe the most approachable for someone that doesn't really watch old science fiction, because science fiction is one of those genres that really changes with every like 5 years even. Right? You kind of get lumps of movies that change the game. And as much as this is also sort of a science fantasy, it is very much a science fiction in the fact that Earth is involved and there's a human there having to deal with it. But that's kind of the extent of it, right? It is more so a science fantasy where everything is beyond Earth and nothing really technological or earthbound is involved except for the human condition. The human condition being the ability to look beyond war and say, like, what about all of us together? Which, you know, is kind of a sweetheart idea. And I don't know. I don't think this is a bad movie. Like, I could see this being a rough watch on your own, but I think this would be a hoot to watch with a group of people.
Oh yeah, get some drinks and some pizza and have a good time with your friends for sure. It's better with friends.
Make a drinking game out of it somehow, you know, like anytime there's a weird sound effect from the soundtrack that's in the movie, you know, make that into a sip of tequila or something.
Whenever I'm back on the podcast, drinking game for whatever movie we're doing.
But it's also a movie that kind of like makes you feel good throughout. You know, there's not anything that is too troublesome. There are some stuff that, you know,
well, the racism,
the sexual assault, those things exist in this movie, but they're not sort of the be all end all as to whether or not you can watch it. You know, there's still a lot of like goofy, cartoonish humor happening as well. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but to me, it's entertaining. It's something that you don't really have to think too much about, even though I'm sitting here trying to like create a reason for those eggs to exist. Like, what do the eggs mean? Which I'm sure there is somebody out there who worked on this movie that like really thought hard about what those eggs mean. They mean nothing. I recommend it strictly for funny business. And if I had to give it a rating, I would say it's not quite a disaster blaster, but it's definitely a Ming ring. It's a Ming ring for sure.
Yeah, this is weird and good, as I remember it. Very trippy and low budget seeming, while also having very intricate set pieces. The actor that plays Flash is god awful, but it kind of works for the fish out of water vibe. Great soundtrack, obviously. It basically is just a Queen album. The movie really puts in perspective how good the space stuff in the older Star Wars films are. In fact, this actually made me want to go rewatch A New Hope. That's all I could fucking think of is those like grays and blacks and how just good Star Wars looks, especially now where it's all been remastered 8,000 times. I'd actually like to watch an old VHS of it from the 70s. That'd be tight.
Well, we should do that on stream.
That'd be great.
Do my Lando impression for you.
Thank you. I do give this a 3.7 out of 5. I think it's a good movie, and I do recommend it. I also give this 10 boar worms out of not the boar worms.
You're yelling not the boar worms, but you're like, give me 10 of them though.
You must watch that.
Okay, I'm gonna watch it tonight.
Not the boar worms. Not the boar worms. Girl,
What are the boar worms?
The boar worms are the worms and stuff. You're not the boar worms.
Yeah.
Not the boar worms. And that is it. That is it. Before we ultimately get the hell out of here, Craig, thank you for being on the show. Do you have anything you'd like to promote or plug, or do you have a message for the world?
I don't have anything to plug. I've stopped doing all my things. I'm not DJing anymore. I'm not really doing comedy anymore. Maybe when my kids are a bit older, I'll have a website or something to share. Maybe I'll start DJing again. But for now, I'm just being a dad. I'm making hot sauce with the peppers that I grow in my backyard. If I were to give the world a message at this point, it would be fuck yourselves.
Oh, fuck.
Oh.
You should become the new Sean Baby. Make a website and become the new Sean Baby. And then,
Or you could become the new Ming the Merciless.
Oh,
give me a Ming ring. Oh, shit. I got one right here. Just,
hey, isn't that just your
my
wedding
wife
ring?
that's
Don't lose that. Thank you. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it very much, as always.
It was a great time. Let's give him one more round of applause before you give your plugs. There's Steve-O. Thank you. Steve, what are you plugging this week? My friend, my man, my guy?
Well, as always, Darth Theorist, check it out. It's a Star Wars fan fiction storytelling podcast on YouTube. But also, I mean, actually, we're almost at 1 million views, guys. It's pretty good. We're doing all right. I'm also doing shit. I thought I memorized them. I started a couple of other ones as well, but I'm going to be in a game called Dominica. The game's coming out in November. I'm a character called actually I'm several characters, but I'm going to be sort of like the quest giver, the main quest giver, named General Hector. Follow me to the end of time and through space, and I'll show you what you're doing. That's how I talk through the game. Other than that, Dr. O, the Arcane Archives, Ready Set Disaster. I forget the name of the other ones, but yeah, I'm doing a bunch of narration, so check them out. Go on YouTube. Look at me up. I'll point you in the right direction.
Hell yeah! Well, thank you for being my co-host each and every week.
Oh, thank you for being my co-host.
And all it is for me is this show. Hey, did you see this one? The weekly podcast roundtable experience, review, reaction show. We go live each and every week, right here where you're watching us. Or if you're watching us later, that's where you're hearing us. Or if you're hearing us, that's where you're watching us. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch. You know, we're on Instagram, I guess, sometimes. Kick. Yeah, that's probably going to go away. But each and every week at 8 p.m. Eastern. Next week's a little different. We're going to do a Tuesday show, but that's neither here nor there. But every Friday, we upload these onto YouTube. That's very important. And I'd also like to shout out the professional wrestling company that I announce for Super Kicked here in Toronto, live every month. This month we have our big Super Kick Presents Paradise show, and then next month we're doing a Grimoire of Familiar Killers here on the podcast, but it is the zombie wrestling show, which I will be announcing it as well. And that has been our show for this week. Steve, as always, I will hit the ending sequence, but before we get to that ending sequence, Craig, there's one question that needs to be asked, and it's asked each and every week. Could you ask that question for us right now?
Hey, did you see this one?
Well, that was a good one, but
It was.
Jason, we've got Greg here. He's traveling. I'd like you to do me one thing, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Bring me the boar worms.
Not the boar worms.
No.
You must watch that.
Okay, I'm gonna watch it
Me,
tonight.
not the boar worms. Not the boar worms. God,
What are the boar
the
worms?
boar worms are the worms and stuff. You're not the boar worms. It's just everything is so sexual and so flash.
I gotta watch it.
Not the boar worms. Not the boardworm.
Did they say it all sensual like that?
See, look at it. It's not the boardworms. Not the boardworms. I really want to seduce a man like that. Not the boardworms. No, not the boardworms. The boardworm.
Beam up some Star Trek content with Live Long and Podcast. Tune in to X-Rated, the X-Men animated review show. Artistic interviews with graphic histories. A roundtable movie discussion with Hey, did you see this one? And movie reviews with Hold Up, a movie podcast. And while you're at it, spin a few records with Eamon on Track. Watch us duke it out on trivial debates. And let's chat about TV with the Super Mater Brothers. It's all here on the United Federation of Podcasts.